Thank you, Sean. Called order at 7:05. And thank you. 7:05, here we go. Regular council meeting on July the 16th. We have quorum. Call to order. Can I have a motion to adopt the agenda? Yes, any changes? You have some changes, CAO John. What are they?
More or less additional notes and information. I just want to point out at item 4B, that would be the delegation from Mr. Doherty.
Yeah.
Materials associated with that will be at pages 177 to 210.
Thank you.
Under 8A4 and 8A5, those are the two survey matters.
Mm-hmm.
The on-table materials that you have before you consist of updated results over the weekend and additional comments. And as well at number 6, 8A6, you have the Chief Financial Officer's on-table report regarding the Asset Management Investment Plan RFP award. And at 9B, that's under resolutions, again with respect to the general store and Mr. Doherty, there is additional correspondence on table. It's part of the package of pages 177 to 210. And then at 11A, there is one piece of additional correspondence on table from Mrs. Azordigan regarding filming. So that'll be R6. And then new business, there is one additional item, 12A, extraordinary vehicle permit application, bracket trailer, bracket.
Thank you. Extraordinary vehicles. Anything else?
That is it for me.
Councillors, any other changes? Nope. Nope, going, done. Okay, motion. Oop.
I had circulated a latest federal grant for EV charging initiatives. Should I just give you a quick report on that, or how do you want to capture
Sure.
that?
Yep.
Want to capture that under unfinished business, just chat about it?
Perhaps that would be a good spot.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, unfinished business, can you?
Number 95.
Yep. Okay, thank you. Sorry, seven unfinished business, 95. So Councillor Barnmere is going to bring that up again. Good. Got it? Yep. It's over there. Thank you. All right, then I think we are go. All in favor of the amended agenda? Thank you. Show of hands. Perfect. We are live and going. Public participation, 2 minutes per person. And Sean, got your list. Who's up first?
Susan.
Ms. Lotette. Ms. Lotette. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Susan Artett and I live at 46 Crossbeat Road, which is just in the townhouses across the street. Just want to make a comment about the amplified music at the cafe. I don't mind the music now and again, but I must admit not every weekend. I also would have liked to have been campus for our input, but was not. And I don't think anyone in our townhouse was, as we are really the closest to the cap after the townhouses over the top. Also, I just want to make a comment that we can hear the music in our unit, even when the windows are closed. That's just all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And there being no other public participation in this format, we would go to the Creative BC filming presentation. Please come forward.
We do a little bit of presentation, bear with us, we promise we won't very long on it. Some of the information here may be redundant to folks. I know that you guys are quite familiar with filming in different aspects, depending on where you live and who you know. So I'll skip through some of the stuff that we do, our regular spiel on, just so we can get to the more important stuff, which is mitigation and some of our main concerns and how to address those in line space specifically. I'm Catherine Pavoni. I work in Industry and Community Affairs with the Provincial Film Commission, which is a part of an organization called Creative BC.
And Julie Stangland, also with Industry and Community Affairs at Creative BC.
So I'm not sure if anyone is familiar with Creative BC. It's an organization that promotes creative sectors in British Columbia. So other than motion picture, we also support, thank you. Book and magazine publishing, music is a big one, magazines, and motion picture is our biggest portion. In the Film Commission specifically, we provide services and expertise in general to the motion picture industry, but we also are on the side of communities and different organizations with that kind of support. The Provincial Film, the Provincial Film Commission has a number of services that they provide to both the industry and the general public. I think that's our biggest point here today, is that we're a resource for the community moving forward after today. We find that a lot of people don't know that we exist, and they don't know who to come to when they're trying to troubleshoot issues or dealing with policies and bigger guideline concerns. So we're here, you have a face to a name now, and we're available 24/7. You can just look us up through, that was a bit of an awkward one. Julie's face was like, what? You can reach us 9 to 5 at our offices anytime. Just a bit about what we do in industry and community affairs specifically, what I was just mentioning, policy, guidelines that are specific to communities. We deal with organizations that are part of the motion picture industry as a whole, so that's unions, anywhere from DGC to the IATSE, and then we also are first point of contact for general inquiries. So how do you get into the industry? How do I list my home? There's a generator parked in my driveway and it's been here for 7 days and I didn't authorize that, and that's weird kind of stuff. So that's what we do in industry and community affairs specifically. And this is kind of probably old hat to you guys. You obviously know that the economic impact of BC filming has been quite a big source of income. We're now at 60,000 plus jobs. You probably know someone who works in the industry, or at least you know someone who knows someone who works in the industry. I know that there are actually people who live in Lions Bay who work in film and television. We're the third largest motion picture hub now in North America, which is pretty impressive. I will pass this over to Julie to go through some of our community benefits.
So when we talk about community benefits,
Absolutely.
we talk about community benefits, we tend to be talking about both regional areas, so Pemberton to Hope in terms of the Lower Mainland, and then also specific communities. What the obvious one is revenue for both the municipalities with their film fees and parking revenue and things, as well as the locations and what we call support spaces, where sometimes if it's filming in a residential neighborhood can be the renting of neighbors' driveways, so they can put trucks there and things like that, and it can kind of spread out a little bit. Sometimes maybe a place with a lunch tent and things like that. I know in Lions Bay you don't have a huge commercial area, so production spending at local businesses is often a bonus for communities. They find sometimes when the production comes in, they'll spend at gas stations, cafes, restaurants, they'll go pick up food, hardware, things like that, dry cleaning. Contributions to local charities or community groups. We thought there's something that might be of great value for you guys to discuss as a community. The film industry really does like to give back to communities as much as they can, and so there are a number of initiatives throughout the Lower Mainland that people will give to sometimes. The North Shore, like the City of North Vancouver and the District of North Vancouver, they both feed into a student fund that is now gotten to the point where they can actually provide scholarships to one student a year to go to film school and study filmmaking and stuff. Township of Langley has a beautification fund that productions will donate to sometimes, and then they'll use that for, beautiful benches and flower baskets and things like that that kind of keep the Fort Langley looking super lovely. And also productions find that there is a mutual benefit to that because the beautification, and that's often the look that they're looking for when they're looking for little small towns. So it's kind of a mutually beneficial relationship. Challenges, which a number of you are probably aware of. Neighborhood impact. Currently in the Lower Mainland, we do have very high levels of production, and so industry stewardship is something that we work very hard on at Creative BC so that we can maintain the success of the industry, but also not have too much strain on neighborhoods who, are basically hosting production in their houses and in their businesses and on their streets. Rising costs and expectations. This is an industry challenge that comes just with a great amount of success. Also sometimes an expectation of a lot more money in people's pockets. That is particularly challenging for domestic filmmakers. So when we're producing our own content, we often don't have the deep pockets that studios do when making films and television here. So it's a challenge that domestic filmmakers kind of have to struggle with a little bit sometimes. And then industry stewardship, as I mentioned earlier, this is what we spend a lot of time on in industry and community affairs, building relationships with municipal film offices, with mayor and council, and then basically acting as a little bit of a relationship hub, government agencies, government ministries that do permitting for filmmaking, and then the rest of the wider community, including the province of British Columbia. So we sort of have a little toolbox here that we've used with various municipalities in terms of what productions are looking for when they actually come to film in the municipality in order to make things streamlined for what they need to do. It's probably hard to read in the back there, so I'll just go through this quickly. Productions often kind of need to know whether something is kind of a conditional yes, we can talk about this and move forward, or maybe they need to move on quite quickly because they have very short timelines that they're working within very often. That the point of contact that they have in the municipality is informed, both of the municipal film offices and they understand how the industry works. And that there is support from mayor and council and residents for the work that's coming in, because everybody knows that filmmaking is impactful, and so there must be ways to mitigate it that the community is happy with. Processes, that they're streamlined for the production. They understand, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then you can get a permit. And also that they're transparent. So if a decision is made that a production doesn't quite understand, they might push a little bit more for a yes, unless they really understand the reasoning behind that no. So transparency just really helps a lot in explaining why a no exists. Control. So when a production does have permission from the municipality, permission from the location owner, they need to kind of have control of that work area so that they can actually do their work. Creative content autonomy. The tax credit, their tax incentive program that the province has set up here is all labor-based, and it is all contingent on above-the-board productions. So sometimes people get worried about pornography. That's not part of the tax incentive program, but we do productions are looking for a little bit of creative control in terms of what they're doing and their autonomy there. And we have private and anonymous there because often productions, stargazers, it's an issue sometimes that they have to deal with, and so they do request they have autonomy so they can do their work in private, as we all often like to do in our offices. Fees, they are very happy paying fees as long as they feel they're fair and reasonable, and again, they're very transparent of what the fees are paying for. And support finally is hugely important. Productions, particularly, the tax incentives are based on BC labor. So in order to get your tax incentives as a production, you need to hire a BC crew. And that's how we've managed to develop such a sustainable, successful industry here. And that also is part of the support that productions look for. They understand that all of their workers are part of the communities that they're working in, and so it's a mutually beneficial, hopefully, arrangement, and they look for that support when they're here. So communities deserve. These are the things that productions strive to bring to communities as best to their abilities and as quick a timeline as they possibly can. There's challenges with production, there's a lot of moving parts, and it can be hard to keep up with them sometimes, but notification is a really important one, that residents understand what the film activity is, what the parking pressures might be, whether something's being filmed at night, or they're going to be special effects, that kind of notification goes out to communities so that they can prepare. Oh, that's my timer, we're getting behind. So communication. Because filmmaking is a creative process, there can be a lot of different changes as they go. Often final creative decisions can sometimes come a little bit late in the game, and so there are sometimes shifts to what their plans are. But ongoing communication with municipalities and residents, they strive to do that as best they can. And then fair compensation. You know, this is an industry, and they understand that everybody needs to be compensated fairly for that.
I would just say on fair compensation, a note that's come up before is compensation can sometimes come in goods in kind or in compensation for, impact on a person. So if a production decides to film overnight and you're located directly across the street, sometimes they'll offer compensation in the way that they'll put you up in a hotel, or that they'll pay for you to go out for a nice dinner, or they'll get you out of the house so that they're not impacting you in your day-to-day basis. So compensation can kind of come in a couple different forms.
Yeah. So just very quickly, because we're out of time really here, there is a code of conduct that you can find on the Creative BC website. It's something that we expect all of the industry members to adhere to. It's a lot of people. So sometimes it can be challenging to kind of keep on top of that, but the locations department do the best they can. And then community resources, we have quite an extensive website. You are always welcome to call us if you have any questions or concerns or need to find something. And we're always there at the other end of the phone. Just finally, Real Green, the production industry in BC is supporting a Real Green initiative that looks at a lot of the environmental impacts that production can sometimes contribute to. And we have a number of different initiatives to try and mitigate some of those things. That's it.
Can we take questions?
Thank you very much. Councillors, any questions?
A couple. The light one, so if we're the third biggest motion, how who's second? I think we all know the first is.
New York.
Yeah,
New York,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
and number one out.
How are you funded?
By the province of BC.
By the province of BC.
Traditionally, the Film Commission used to sit within government, and then a few years ago, the Liberal government decided to shift it out, merge it with BC Film and Media, which processed all the tax credits, and called the whole thing Creative BC, and then said, can you also look after book, magazine, and music? And
Okay, so you're not funded by the industry?
you're not.
No.
Okay.
We're with Switzerland. We like to say that we'd like to help both sides as best we can.
Yeah.
Neutral party.
Yeah, that answers my third question. Okay.
I have a couple that are very, very broad but somewhat granular. We've got some information, and I can kind of see what daily filming rates are, where the municipality charges, and they range from higher to considerably lower. In your view, relative to the film, if it was more than a day, is the cost actually relevant? I mean, $150 to $700 for most enterprises is not very much. So can I get your feedback on that?
Well, it touches on a point that I sort of missed in my intro that we wanted to touch on briefly in regards to Lionsbay specifically. Productions, even if you open the floodgates and you say we're open for business, we'll welcome everyone, you can shoot here every single day of the week, all night long, every day, for 365 days a year, that doesn't necessarily mean anyone's coming, right? So it's purely creative based, and if a production needs a specific location that bad, they will pay on a scale that's proportionate to what that production can do.
Gotcha.
So if I'm rolling in here with all the movie stars in the world, and I really need that house, and I'll pay the whole village of Lions Bay, that could happen.
Okay.
However, we are still trying to work with domestic productions as much as we're trying to deal with the movie stars. So it's finding that middle ground. So that's why having sort of a middle of the road rate that's approachable to productions and having more frequent flyers might be a better way to go than saying, no, we're only open if you're going to pay the millions, if that makes sense.
Somewhat, which goes to another granular question. The opportunity was to offer or entice, whichever way you want to put it, residents to leave during a particularly onerous shoot or something like that. What does that mean in terms of hotel accommodation and other stuff? In your view, what would that look like? Where would they be going?
Generally, the larger...
What's the per diem?
Yeah, generally the larger productions would look after booking a hotel. So because they do such good business with the hotels, they can get preferred rates, so they will look after the hotel booking. Often these are hotels that are in downtown Vancouver. If a resident says, actually, I'd rather stay at this place in Horseshoe Bay or over here in West Van, then they would be very accommodating to whatever makes the resident the most happy that they can actually do that. Per diem, I would have to kind of check in with production to see what standard rates are. I think it's about $80 a day. Yeah, like ish.
Per family, per person?
Per person.
Thank
Yeah.
you. I think you've got mine. And in this, you also talk about rising costs and expectations. So this is an industry piece, not a particular commercial shoot or something like that.
I would say it's sort of on both sides of the coin, because expectations, sometimes when communities have had a really big show in and they've gotten a lot of attention and they have been paid out a lot, their expectations for the next show might be different or skewed from what they were before. So it works from both sides. So industry struggles with it a little bit because the costs are going up because people are asking for more. But on the other hand, the community's expectations sometimes are skewed based on which production has been there the last time. And the expectations can also be on the negative side, right? You expect a show to come back and behave badly because one did before, but we can't paint every show with the same brush in a way. For the most part, this industry is full of extremely amazing professionals, but every once in a while you get a bad apple, and that's the same in any industry. So it's those expectations and trying to keep an open mind so that we can change that expectation show to show.
I would also just add to that sometimes the costs to a production might determine that by impact. So if they're going to be there all night, there's a lot of lights, they're doing gunfire and the whole entire thing, that's a massive impact for a community, and so therefore they would understand, like, yep, everybody kind of deserves a little bit more attention as a result. But if they're coming in the day, and things are reasonably contained, they don't have that many trucks, they're not doing special effects, then the impact is not as much, so they wouldn't really want to kind of compensate for everybody if it wasn't that big of an impact.
Good. Councillors, any other questions?
I'm wondering, with respect to your slide on what communities deserve, and there's the ongoing communication piece, and you talked about schedule changes. I understand that schedule changes are going to happen, but when they're substantial and they really kind of change the nature of what people expected when they were polled, how do you reconcile that? Or how does a community reconcile those kinds of substantive changes that kind of go against what people were expecting?
That's a really, really tricky
No,
one.
it's a good question, and it does happen, and we have had to deal with the fallout of that. I think the most important thing is that all the locations teams have people on the ground 24/7. There's no way you're walking in, the production decides they've changed their minds, and nobody's going to get to know. I think most productions do their best to mitigate those immediately affected by a change, whether they can address people individually by knocking on their door and say, just so you know, we're not shooting tomorrow anymore because it's snowing and it's supposed to be California. We need to push this by a day, but we asked for our weather day to be last week, but the actor's now sick, so we have to, it's gonna be one of those, they do their best to get out there. If the impact affects someone's life, then again, the production knows that changes like that will have a snowball effect and that they need to deal with those who were impacted by it. It's not one of those things where we would brush it off and say, oh, too bad we made a change and we forgot to tell you, sort of thing. I think every production should be responsible for what they said they were going to do if something doesn't go that direction.
Right.
Does that make sense? Sort of? Best laid plans.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome, and thanks for having us.
Good. All right.
Good luck for the rest of the meeting today.
Bill, next up, Mr. Doherty. Just hang on till he's on.
Hello, Mayor and Council. I just have some written submissions to hand around. 10 minutes never tends to be long enough, particularly when you're long-winded. So I have 8 here that will almost cover us, I think. I can get more copies to you. I forgot to count myself in.
Okay,
So could you let me know when my time starts?
Shauna gets one, gallery gets one.
They've already got,
Thank you. Okay, are you ready to go?
I'm ready to go.
Okay, you're
Morning,
live.
Council. My name's Craig Doherty. I'm one of the proprietors of the Lions Bay General Store and Cafe. You'll recall on June 18, Council granted an exception to the bylaw to allow the cafe and store to have live amplified music on the patio over summer for Friday, Saturday, Sundays and for public holiday Mondays. On the last occasion Council met, there was a delegation that brought opposition to that. I understand that it's going to be further considered tonight, and so I wanted to come along and just present a fully rounded position as to what's really, what we're really looking to achieve at the cafe. I'll take up some of the time, if it's possible, if you could let me know when 5 minutes is up, because what I propose to do, the crux of the matter here is going to be amplification. Okay, so I'm not going to speak to that. I don't pretend to be an expert. I'm not a musician, but I'm going to have Mark Coghlan, who is an expert musician who plays on our patio, has played over the last couple of years, just to come and address you on amplification, why it's necessary, and be available to Council to answer any questions. Firstly, let me say that I appreciate the exception, and as in any discretion, it's a privilege, not a right. We need to show that we deserve that privilege, and hopefully here to present that case. I think what we're trying to achieve at the cafe and general store, it reminds me of one of my favourite books of all time, To Kill a Mockingbird, and what Atticus Finch said to his children, that it would be a sin to kill a mockingbird. Well, it would be a sin if we did nothing to promote music on the cafe and the cafe patio. You would be killing a mockingbird, in effect. There's a bunch of emails of support from around the village. You've got some written submissions. I'm going to gloss over a couple of them because I know that everybody can read, but I do want to point out a couple of salient points here. Firstly, we are a mixed-use complex. Okay? Anyone who bought a residence above a mixed-use complex appreciates they're buying above a business, and that business is going to do everything it can to promote its business. Not in an offensive way, but just in a progressive way. The patio that the guitarists have played on to date, they've played on 3 occasions this summer, twice finished at 5 p.m. in the afternoon, and on the 3rd occasion at 6 p.m. These, I will say this, and you will see this from the support that has come in, just from a couple of simple emails that I sent around, because I had a fear that we may lose this privilege. These sorts of events and the live music are something that village residents, they're asking for. If you look at the spread of ages and length and longevity residing in Lions Bay, from Louis Peterson, Isabel Chester and Mike Hurst, they must have a collective 120 years in this village supporting live music on the patio. To people like Simon Waterson, the Bageses, the Wasneys, Barbara Sanseverino, John Phillips and Adele Van Tonda, to Michael and Elizabeth Moore, who've been here 4 years, to a young family that just moved in and came and celebrated with us when we had a paella party. We should be entitled to run and grow our businesses on the basis that we're not being offensive or unreasonable, we're in compliance with all of our business licences, and having regard to the fact that the opposition above us, there may be others tonight that also support that opposition, but fairly limited group out of 1,400 residents here. From a let's call it a legal standpoint, I will say that on the last Wednesday evening, our Strata Council passed a resolution. That's in paragraph 10 of the written submissions. They passed a resolution on the basis that the business, the store and cafe, was operating in accordance with any municipal legislation, bylaws, and in accordance with the business licences. It would not be considered to be a nuisance under our bylaw 3. That was passed by majority, a strata council that comprised of 3 residential owners and 1 commercial owner. So an overwhelming majority of residential voices on that strata council. I won't read out the resolution that was passed, but you can see that at the granular or micro level, that there is majority support within our strata for these events. And yes, Councillor, thanks very much. What I might do at this moment, I might just call on Mr. Coghlan to come up to be available just to answer your questions and to talk to the issue of amplification. You can see that page 3 of those written submissions, I asked him some simple questions if he'd address them, to know that I was actually on reasonably firm ground with my thoughts. But perhaps you could come forward, Mark? Sure. And I'll just step to one side for the moment.
So, amplification, this is, I guess, the crux of the issue here. But suffice it to say that the term amplification is a bit of a misnomer in the sense that people hear this word amplification and what they hear is loud, when in fact that's not necessarily what's happening in terms of the end result. There's a lot that can be done with, in effect, electrifying the sound that doesn't have to raise the overall level. That's point 5 on the page if you want to look at that. It's the concept of compression, which is a point of audio engineering. The idea, the basic gist of it all is that if you can control the sound, you can have it so that folks that are listening to you can hear the small, tiny, whisper quiet stuff as well as the loud stuff in a way such that you can control the overall volume level, set to whatever you want, whatever is the folks upstairs find is okay, to bylaws, you name it, whatever it happens to be. As a matter of fact, nowadays with phones and what have you, you can have decibel meters and such like that, so it can be controlled to a very high degree. Now, when it comes to the use of amplification for music, a lot can be said about the quality of the music, what the singer or performer can do in terms of either tricks or effects, things of this nature. Without getting too far down that rabbit hole, suffice it to say that without the use of amplification, you can't get to a point that you're giving people a professional show. And at this point, that's something that, what with all these phones and such I see kicking around and such, we've all become used to. Whether you have somebody in your family that can play guitar or sing or what have you, that's all very well and good. But when people show up and come to a place to listen to live music, maybe have a beer or something of that nature, support a local business, then this type of thing puts it on a more professional level. And again, it doesn't have to mean loud. So, is there anything in this that you wanted me to flesh out a bit, or any direct questions about either loudness or indeed amplification?
I'm wondering, I'm on your side of this thing, but is it so much the loud amplified music per se, or is it the loud laughter and, you know, carrying on with the party? Is
Well,
that, people don't have a problem with there being like a party on the deck?
I don't want to interrupt, but I've only got 10 minutes, and I just want to make a couple more points, and maybe it's something in council can even ask of the audience. I don't mind. There's no questions. I just wanted to, thanks Mark.
Yeah.
I just wanted to finish up. 10 minutes is not a long time. I do want to point out as well that if I can say this, is that governing is listening to constituents. You're never going to make all of the people happy all of the time. It often means compromise. If you look at what's being happened here, there's a whole lot of compromise going on from the cafe's position. We've abridged what we're seeking by season in a macro sense, in a subset of that, days of the week. No, Friday, Saturday and Sunday, and time to the day, not before 12 and not after 8. But in fact, we've gone further than that. In the spirit of compromise, what we've done is we've set forth an agenda for the balance of the summer. We've said we're not going to hold events on Fridays or Sundays. People may see that as a day of rest before going back to work. It's going to be limited to the hours on a Saturday afternoon I do want a bit of latitude for inclement weather, but if you look at the way that we're seeking to compromise, with all of those inhibitors on putting on live music, which I would suggest, based on what Mark just said, is not necessarily a nuisance or noisy, but it needs to be professional if we're going to put any sort of degree of professionalism into the cafe. But if you look at what's being offered from our opponents, there is no compromise. It is nothing. It is not, yes, we can accept days of the week, we can accept times of the day. In fact, so I did send round an agenda today to set out that. So you can see all we're seeking is a specified agenda. We're not seeking carte blanche. So in conclusion, I'd ask the council to affirm its earlier exception on the basis that you can see what we're trying to achieve. Or if you wanted to recraft something more aligned with our agenda, I really have no objection to that, because we're not trying to put music on 3 days a week for 12 weeks. There's just not the audience there. Thank you for your time. Does anyone have any questions of me?
Good. Councillors, any questions?
Just a little further clarification, Craig, on the schedule you've given us at the back here. So in August, the first 4 weeks of August, basically, so each Saturday night.
Yes.
Do you expect to use each Saturday night, or do you expect to have something on each night?
I don't know at the moment. It kind of depends.
Depends how the first one goes?
It kind of does.
Okay.
It depends on the take-up. What we're
But
trying
what you're committing to is it won't be more than each Saturday?
No, it won't be more than that, so it's a defined list. But what we're trying to tie it in with is Saturday mornings are busy. We're trying to tie it in with a happy hour that we're running on a Saturday afternoon, so that people can come in, they can come off the beach perhaps and say, let's go and listen to a few live tunes up at the cafe. It's going to finish by 6. It's not exactly Granville Street on a Saturday night.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question or two. Council's going to be talking about this later on. Embedded within our package is the last meeting where one of the speakers mentioned that they couldn't carry on a conversation. I may not have the exact wording right, but I think you'll get the thread of it. Couldn't carry on a conversation in their unit. Where is the consideration for them in this?
Well, you're going to come down to a he said, she said, literally. It's hard not to make it about that, but I live in unit number 1, and on that particular day, because it wasn't the paella party, because the representative of the delegation on the last occasion lives in the apartment next to me, they were all out of town on the weekend of the paella party, so it must have been the weekend before. On that weekend, I was inside my apartment with the door open. At 2:15, I had to go out, check out, and look over the edge to see if Dan, who was speaking a moment ago, had actually started. Now, you don't have to be a PhD in physics to know that sound travels in a straight line. When they're playing, there's the overhang from the, from upstairs, the patios, okay, or the decks. They're underneath the decks. So the sound is going to bounce up and bounce out. I'm not saying that they couldn't hear it, but when you're trying to prove a point and you're passionate about it, and I don't disagree that there's not passion from people within our complex, but I'm suggesting I was in the same position and I couldn't hear the music. And you noticed when the video was taken, the person had to lean over the side, i.e. sound was travelling in a straight line. That's about the best answer I can give you, Mayor.
Okay. Councillors, any other questions? Nope, thank you very much.
I can just say that playing, there's people not very far away from the speakers having a conversation. As a matter of fact, that's why we need amplification as musicians. Other than like what Mark says, the effects and have some reverb and delay and stuff that makes it sound a little more. But anyways, people are not very far away having a conversation. And I think, again, to my previous point, it's about, people having a good time and a party on deck.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Jordan.
Can I just ask you a quick question about that? When you've played at the Christmas fair and such,
Yes.
correct, with your children? Are those amplified?
Yep, in the hall, yeah.
Okay.
But also what's amplified are the arts and garden which, you know, we just did. I had my kids down there, and they're all day long. Well, no, it's 3 to 6, I think, too.
Yeah.
But the neighboring properties aren't complaining, and they're pretty, you can hear, like, from the next door.
They're amplified. They're all amplified.
Yeah, they're out.
Okay, thank you.
Good.
It's
Thank you.
hard.
All right, I see the next delegation is congregating outside. So, Councillor Cunliffe, could you open the door for them? Got it?
We're done.
Neville?
Demonstration? The demonstration.
Okay, let's have a look at what we're talking about. There we go. Good night, folks. Nice to see you.
Ours will be short and sweet.
Best council meeting ever.
No, I don't need it. Thanks.
I never thought I'd say that dogs have quickly become one of my favorite topics. Live music, not so much.
See, council, like,
Stick with my name off the door.
So ours is very easy. We have our supporting material. And basically, we're here tonight to just ask the council receive the delegation. We have some of the people that want to work on the committee, and we're going to bring it to Village who wants to be on the committee. And during the dog days of summer, that's now, and be open to hearing a formal proposal in the fall from community residents regarding a fun agility park in the village at the off-leash dog park, Marjorie's Meadows, or any other suitable dog park. B just recently finished basics agility, Bow Wow Academy, which is true, in North Vancouver and Old Island. And so she's really keen to have a dog park here. Any questions of us?
It's always good to have people in the boundary with higher education.
I've got a question about Marjorie Meadows.
Yes?
So in the summertime, when there's stream pumps, you can hardly hear yourself there. Don't you need to be able to communicate with the dogs when you're doing this?
No, because you start obedience and you make them sit, and then they're looking at you, and so.
So it's both verbal and hand
Then you say,
communication.
we've come, so they start watching your body, and the whole thing is you're moving, so they're gonna move with you.
What other,
With a village full of well-behaved dogs.
No, because you can even do this, a fun agility you can do
No,
with
but
the dog
that's
on
a
a leash.
benefit in my mind, if
the dogs will communicate?
people have the opportunity to train their dogs.
You get a more confident dog.
My only other concern about Marjorie Meadows is if the dog decides to run down, and we have had cases where dogs decide to run down to the water down there, they can get down fairly easily. If they get into the, you've got to be really careful with your dog around Marjorie Meadows.
Oh,
If
yes.
to me, what kind of dog?
Yes.
Your dog can swim across, but not all dogs can. So that would be another concern. So have you thought of any other areas, or is Marjorie Meadows just mentioned because that's the only one you could think
No,
of?
what it was, around Christmas time, I talked to John Dudley, and he had suggested Loggers Lane right beside the school. So I went and had a look at that, and it's kind of steep for older people like me. And also, it's very close to the school. I don't think we should encourage so many dogs in a non-dog park environment there. And it ties up with the Centennial Trail as well. So, but the committee most certainly will look at all the trails and talk to the trailblazers and see where another place might be.
There you go. And Carol, do you have a blue sky budget for this?
Well, we're hoping to use repurposed stuff that we have. You can see from the attachments some of the things. We have some leaf poles, we have some tunnels, we have some whatever. And if we do need anything it's a small balancing board kind of thing. It wouldn't be very much. So our budget would be modest, and we try to raise money for that, or try to put it in a proposal if we do need a little bit of money.
Okay,
We could build that.
or Works Department could build it. There's commitment for you, and when does, just to remind me again, CFO Rick, when does the community grantee stuff come out?
That comes out early 2020.
Early 2020, so we're ahead of the curve. All right. Did you have something?
Just that the ask of us is that we are open to receiving a proposal. That's really the only ask.
Yes, that's the only answer.
I think you've got your nods already. What I would ask is that this powerhouse doggy-led group could always use senior government involved. Is there a councillor that would like to be the liaison with the Bow Wow bureaucrats? Okay.
Yeah, I'm happy to support it.
And there you go. And you can find Councillor Barmere's email address in the book.
Yes, great.
Thank you very much for your
Thank you very
presentation.
much. Thank you.
All right.
So we're going to leave. Unless you want to.
There we go. Good night, and thank you very much for coming.
That was the
Arash?
least contentious of all delegations ever.
I'm not sure who needs it, but.
Do you have to get set up or you're good?
Do you want
No,
your-
I'm just.
Yeah.
Yeah. I submitted some attachments that some of you get some access to.
Okay, if you're ready to go, you are on the clock.
Okay, so my name is Arash, Mr. Mayor, honorable council members. My name is Arash Ranshi, and I'm here today to talk about much needed new restoration bylaw in Lions Bay. Just to give you a little bit of background, I started communicating with the previous mayor a few years back in regards to development of the new bylaw, as I felt that other similar municipalities have already regulated view restoration, and Lions Bay lacks such a regulation. One of the things that I did in collaboration with the previous mayor was the study that we conducted on other municipalities' view regulations, and we presented that study in the council meeting of September 18th of last year. And if you haven't seen that report, I would encourage you to go through it and review this. It has lots of useful information on it. It's 10 months from that meeting, and we have a new council. And I also met other Lions Bay residents that are facing the same issue that I am facing. And we thought it would be a very good time to run a sort of an online survey, or let's say petition, to get a feel of how much support we are getting in regards to the development of the view bylaw. So what we did is we registered in an online petition website, and we sent email to a random 50 email addresses that we gathered from different people. And we got 28 positive responses and lots of comments from people in regards to this issue. And we were actually overwhelmed with the amount of frustration and injustice some of the residents in Lions Bay feel in regards to the issue of view blockage and view restoration. I just wanted to touch some points that, when it comes to this view bylaw that we are requesting to be developed. First of all, we don't want this bylaw to have any financial burden on the municipality. So what we have in mind is that the bylaw develops in such a way that there will be an application fee for the claim on restoration of the views that is high enough, sufficient enough, perhaps $1,000 or more, that would cover all the costs associated with implementation of the bylaw. The bylaw would require establishing of a view restoration committee, which would consist of Lions Bay residents, and that should be part of the bylaw. And one thing that we wanted to point out is that as people who are affected by this view blockage issue, they also enjoy the green landscape of Lions Bay, so we are by no means against trees. And we are not proposing clear-cutting trees at all. What we are proposing is windowing, trimming, and topping trees in order to be able to restore views to where they used to be in the village. One of the other issues that based on our discussion with the previous mayor, we realized that might be on a way of developing this bylaw would be the lack of manpower for development of such a bylaw. It takes lots of efforts to write the bylaw. So we had a discussion in regards to manpower and how we can do with the residents that are affected by this issue. And we came to conclusion that we can allocate some hours ourselves and perhaps perhaps come up with the first draft of the bylaw based on other municipalities' bylaws that are available. And we can submit that first draft to the council. This way, it would be much easier to work off of a draft rather than starting a bylaw from scratch in terms of manpower requirements and so on. So these are all the points that I have at this point. If you would have time, and I would encourage you to read all the comments that are mentioned in that petition from different Lions Bay residents. Some of them are very well known in Lions Bay. It clearly speaks to the issue. And in conclusion, I would respectfully ask the council to develop this bylaw. This new issue is an issue that has been in the village for a long time. And quite honestly, perhaps it should have been addressed by the founders of the village at the time of establishment, but unfortunately that's not the case. And it's causing the feel that it is causing a feel of frustration and injustice towards people who are affected by the issue, which would result in division. And I think a bylaw that provides guidelines would help with the unity of the community. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. Councillors, do you have any questions? Yes?
So you said you sent out 50 emails and you got 28 positive responses. Can I assume you got 22 negative responses?
No, I didn't get that. Well, we get one, so the email was in regards to signing the petition, so people were against it, they didn't sign the petition. So there was one negative email.
There was one negative email and 27 people chose not to sign, or chose not to respond.
28 people out of 50, so 21 people.
So 21 chose not to sign.
Yes.
I'll do the math. Okay.
So we don't know what their position is. They might not be even affected by the new issue. So if you have a waterfront property, you don't have any trees, like the trees belong to your property rather than other properties. So this would affect a certain member of the community, not everybody. So.
Okay. I'm just trying to gauge how much credence I should give to this as a survey, and whether it's how widespread it was,
No, it was
or how
just
biased the response was. I guess I think
it was a sort of online survey. So if you're asking a full-scale petition,
it was an invitation to sign up to petition. It wasn't really a survey.
Yes, it was an invitation to sign up a petition, but an online petition. So we didn't go and knock on people's door with the petition paper to ask them to sign. So.
Any more questions? Arash, I think as I've communicated to you and staff and council have been copied, this will be one of the items on our strategy session, which I expect will be in late October, November, and it'll be one of the topics that we're going to consider pursuing this year or not.
Okay. The decision that we have from the people that I spoke to is that we would submit that first draft of the bylaw, and it would be in your discretion what would you want to do with it. So we're going to start preparing the first draft.
I can't tell you not to, but in all fairness, if people are working on things, then there's an expectation.
Well, I think there's expectations already there for people who are.
Fair enough. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right, and which brings us to item number 5, which is the review of the July the 2nd minutes. And I'm not sure whether something's changed since prior ones or whether it's just page 36 and 7 I was riveted with, but I quite like these minutes, so there we go. Can I have a motion to accept the minutes and then to any changes? Thank you. Any changes? I have none. Are you doing this on purpose, Councillor Abbott? There's always something.
No, trust me.
Okay, well, I'm trying to win the lottery here. So, okay, let's take it that there are no amendments, so motion to accept them as presented. Thank you. Done. Next up, which is business arising from the minutes. And I think there, from my perspective, other than what's coming up in the unfinished business, there is none. Same? All in favor? Good, thank you. Next on, unfinished business, item 7, CAO Dijon.
Nothing to report on the first one. With respect to the second one, we did make some inquiries with BC Hydro, and Mr. Jaffer, was it the case that they basically said such station would only require 200 amp service, so effectively any pole could provide that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right.
So the gist of the discussion was that you want to submit when you're ready, when you have a site selected and you're ready to get a formal design. So otherwise any pole will work.
The next step is the ESI form. Yeah, that's fair. Okay.
It-
That's,
Who's doing the
so that opens up the village, really.
Doesn't have to have a transformer on it, just
No.
any pole.
Any pole.
Councillor Barbara, what's the next step?
So the next step would be to pick a location, right? That would be the trick.
Yeah, so from our perspective, the community center site, the general store, there's a number of sites, and I think what you want to look at is the pros and cons, and maybe that's something that the IC could look at. I do know that they were given a resolution to look into operations, maintenance, that sort of stuff.
Sure. Yeah. It's worth
So, accelerating along here, they're not in session until the end of September. Is this something we want to float? Is that not true?
I think that's true.
It is true, I'm pretty sure. We're not coming in August, so September. So is this, I know that Councillor Abbott's going to be responding to them on sometime. Is this something we might want to put into that? I mean, I also have another project that I would be interested in pursuing.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's about to go on,
Peter.
the university's about to go on holidays here and
Yeah.
a whole bunch of stuff, so I'm just trying to push
Yeah.
this forward, even if it's a baby step.
Well, perhaps we can sort of park this aspect of it for a second and let Councillor Barmeyer update us on the latest information about grant funding, because maybe that impacts timelines and stuff.
Yeah, it's not necessarily a straightforward grant that they've just floated. So they floated another grant, and that it's an indication that they still have lots of money to spend on this infrastructure. So the government still stands behind it fairly firmly. And we're fairly surprised that they already put another grant out, because it just closed in May. So they've reinitiated a new grant, and they're opening it up to a broader scope. And this, basically your entry bid is 20 spots. So it's a pretty high number of spots that they're funding per applicant. So it might be something that maybe we could combine with West Van or other communities along the corridor. That's a bit more coordination. It's not a super straightforward application. I don't know if West Van's looking into applying, if some other communities along the corridor are looking at applying, but we might be able to say, hey, can we piggyback on your application for two spots, for example. It's not a straightforward application. I would suspect that another grant will come out that might be a little bit more suited to our specific resolution, which is one spot, one station.
Yeah, so maybe we should hold our cards a little tight on this one and just keep the motor running in preparation?
Yeah, so really the next step, the practical next step, once you have a location identified, is to go to BC Hydro and go through the ESI, their application procedure, where they formally assign a designer to the site, and they give you a real good number on how much it's actually going to cost to get the power to your charger. They'll give you a fixed number and say, we'll do it for X dollars, and then we have a peg in the ground. We know exactly what we're paying to get power to the charger.
Yeah, so basically you're talking about the drop from the pole down to the ground.
Under the ground, into the bottom of the charger, that connection, right?
Okay.
They'll give you a fixed price for that part. And then where the charger starts, that's the municipality's responsibility to provide.
Okay.
And if we subcontract that out.
Yeah, so just as an example, the bus stop at Cross Creek was a $7,000 cost to bring the drop down. Power's a lot less, but I don't suspect that makes that much of a difference.
No.
It's just the price of the hardware,
Yeah.
the box, etc. Right? So once you have that, it's determining the cost of the
So
actual.
That brings, so if I were to look at that number and say the cost of a charger, if we're gonna go with a DC charger, for example, we're probably looking at a $60,000 project.
So,
Plus the electrical.
All in. So
All in.
that would be the charger, connecting it, the civil to put the pad down, everything in one.
Okay.
And with potential grants of?
Well, the grant is high. The grant is, but this particular grant probably wouldn't be so suited to us.
Mhm.
We'd get, right now the way it reads is we qualify for 75% and we'd have to fund 25. That's how I read it. But it's bundled with a bigger application.
So we need to,
So I don't know if you can talk to some
we need
people.
to sign off, yeah, okay. All right, so then, second, so Councillor Abbott, you're up. You guys fight it out.
Peter's first. On the previous, sorry, the previous discussion in the ground, I thought it had to be on municipal property. Could not be on private property or commercial, correct? So your idea of the store or other places wouldn't work. Which means it sounds like it's outside the front door here.
Well, I mean, from a profile perspective, I mean, there's
That really is the
probably,
place to put it.
number one is right behind us. Okay, so then let's, on the grant front, you're pioneering as you're doing, Councillor Barmier and Councillor Abbott will, when we send our stuff off to the IC, this might be one of their little things that they might be involved in, but
The way that, just to clarify the resolution that we passed, the IC committee was meant to look at ways to offset operating costs. So look at how other municipalities are charging and maintaining the system and how we could do that. That was the extent of their involvement. Getting them involved at this stage with the technical
with the other
details
stuff, no,
doesn't
agreed.
make sense because it's just a straightforward electrical application.
Okay.
Thank you for that reminder. Councillor Abbott, we'll be digging for that resolution, I'm sure.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
No, I'm just wondering if we have, I don't know if IC, if we have the right qualifications on the IC to do that. But we'll bring it to the committee.
Well,
and see where it goes.
let's let them duke it out. Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Barmier. Okay, next up was,
I just had a
Oh, sorry.
clarification
hiding in
question.
plain sight there.
With respect to next steps and talking to Hydro, I seem to recall that we had set aside, correct me if I'm wrong, $500 and $5,000.
Yeah, 5,500.
So it's like $500 to apply to Hydro for the application to do the design,
So
and
the
then
first step would be-
$5,000 for the design?
So the first step would be the 500 application to BC Hydro with the location that we've earmarked. They would then technically vet that location, say, yes, for sure, the power's there. It takes some time because they have to look at loading and planning. They look at what other loads could possibly come up in the neighborhood to make sure that pole can actually sustainably carry that charger for the next 25 years or whatever. Once they've done that, they will assign us a designer.
Is that the 5,000 part?
That's the 5,000 part. We may not even spend that money because it might be really straightforward. They may just give us the civil work up to the pad and say, look, this is the drawing, this is what the civil guys need to do to get you to your pad.
Right.
We may not spend any money because we could go to a company like, for example, ChargePoint, who had contacted you and say, hey, we've got our location, we've got the BC Hydro designer engaged, can you guys do the rest? They may give us an off-the-shelf design, right, with a civil pad, with the drawings, and then BC Hydro and them coordinate, and that $5,000 may not get spent at all.
Yeah, that's exactly what we did with Cobra and the pole.
Yeah.
Cobra didn't need to have BC Hydro do his design.
Right.
They already had a standard design.
Yeah, that 5,000 for me was just a cushion in case it gets more complex, in case their civil works are more involved, or there's other things that have to be put into the ground that BC Hydro would design for us.
And the grant opportunity that ended in May or so, I think that one came out in the fall of last year.
Right.
So assuming, for the one's worth, that we did something similar would come out again, and that was the opportunity to get up to 100%, right, on that one?
That was right. That's how that one read. Yeah.
Okay.
The other thing to look at is just to reach out to ChargePoint again and say, in light of this new application, do you guys have a group of interested people? They're in the business of selling these things. They may be able to find a synergy and lump a group of applicants together, right? There's lots of opportunities there.
Yeah.
And ChargePoint really is establishing itself as kind of this industry leader in terms of equipment and the usability of it, the application on the phone, the way to pay. You're paying now. I mean, people are not getting this for free anymore. I'm paying for this ChargePoint.
Okay, Councillor Barmer, you're happy where this is going at this point in time?
Absolutely. I mean,
Good.
thanks. I appreciate the
Good.
update.
The next item, which is mine, that's been responded to. The next one on the biosphere. Sean is coordinating that. It hasn't come forward. It's still pending. Councillor Cunliffe, September circled on your calendar. Thank you.
I'll be reminding you all.
Thank you. And then to the Public Works Manager on the hedge.
Letter was sent.
There we go, and that could be a straight 99. I can't believe we're gonna hit triple digits now. All right, next up, thank you. Reports, staff. CFO, I'll give you a drum roll, the mid-year review.
So this is, I'm calling this the preliminary mid-year review. Normally, I would wait until we had all the June invoices in, and I would be presenting it probably early August, but of course we don't have council meetings then. And I don't like waiting until September, because this is really the first time you'll have seen how we're doing against budget. So there are a fair number of June invoices that are not in this review. So we're tracking at about 45% of our expenses right now. So right now we are tracking on budget, but I have a few areas, we'll probably discuss some more in the third quarter review, where I'm concerned we will be going over budget, which will hopefully be offset by areas that we're going under budget. Just the public works expenses and the parks expenses tend to be heavier in the summer, particularly parks, and we're already tracking at about 50% there. The windstorm did some damage, so there was more repairs to be done to the beach park. We had a problem with the log boom that had to be repaired. It's just little things like that, but they become, it's 1,000 here and 1,000 there. So I'm predicting that some of the public works expenses will finish the year over budget, which every year we have finished on budget overall, but this year it's going to be a bit of a challenge. What we'll be looking at when we do our analysis in September, October, are areas where we may have to reduce some spending to offset areas where we've gone over. It's always hard when you do budgeting. You do your best to kind of predict, but our budgets are very tight. And just little things like the wind, well, not little things, but things like the windstorm, and then we have more maintenance to do on the beach, and our budgets are so tight that it can, suddenly we're over budget. So I've done sort of my analysis on each page, so I don't know if you want to do the usual practice of just any questions?
I don't always have to go first.
Well, I mean, I have some, but I mean, I'm sitting at this end of the table.
we'll start with
Let's
Fred.
work towards me. Councillor Cunliffe, do you have any questions?
No. Okay.
Thank you very much for that brevity. There you go.
Councillor Bain may have some questions?
Councillor
sorry.
Bain?
Well, actually, I found no errors. Very good.
Thank you, Councillor Bain.
Usually I find something wrong.
All right, there you go.
Actually, I must apologize. ESS has had a name change. They no longer call it emergency social services. It's called emergency support services. This has come down from the province earlier this year. I could say I should have mentioned it, but I
But it's
forgot.
still ESS, the
Yeah.
initials are the same?
Yeah.
Okay, so support services?
Yep.
Okay.
That's about as heavy duty as I can get. Good report.
Thank you.
Well, when we go counterclockwise, so you'll be last. There you go. If I could, since you're sitting beside me, CFO, I'm starting on page 44. The big numbers on the revenue piece are the grants and proceeds from borrowing. Can you give us a quick snapshot on that $1 million there?
Well, the proceeds from borrowing was the borrowing we did for the Public Works truck, so that we got that borrowing the 1st of January. And then in terms of the grants, I'll have to go to the more detailed page. The big grant we get, well, there's obviously the clean water, wastewater. So that, I've just booked the revenue that we've earned, so it's our 83% of what we've spent. And our other one is the small community grant. That's a big one that we get, and that is the only unconditional grant we get.
Okay.
So we can, and it's actually meant to be used for operating, unlike most grants. It's to help us with our operating expenses. And the gas tax funding, if you recall, it's usually about $54,000 a year, but this year we're getting a one-time second payment, so we're getting $118,000, but that's paid in July and December. And then the miscellaneous grants, $15,000 for the UBCM Asset Management Grant, which you'll see on my on-table report. We just found out a few days ago we did get that grant. So that's a $15,000 grant, or 50% of the project cost. And the Whistler, sorry.
What was that one again?
Oh, it's the UBCM Asset Management Grant.
Oh, yes.
So I've got my on-table report where the RFP closed on Friday, but the timing was good. We found out that we actually we were successful with the grant application. And the other big one was we applied for the Whistler Blackcomb Grant for fire equipment, and we're allowed to apply for that every 2 years. So I applied for 2 pieces of equipment, and they have awarded 1 piece of the equipment. So although we had budgeted $15,619, we're actually just getting $8,674. But there'll be no impact because we didn't make the purchase until we find out we got the grant. So it'll be a net zero impact on the budget. We'll just get the money and then buy what we got the budget for.
Good. And on to page 45, almost dead center, if you could go to the parking fines and parking meters.
Yes.
So the numbers didn't quite resonate to me, but the budget of 10,000, our fines are 25%, but our metering is well over what it should be through the stub season that it enjoys. So from this, I gather that people like paying at parking meters, not getting fines.
Yes, the parking fine's a little deceptive because it's a cash basis. So we just get the money when we receive the tickets. So there is a bit of a lag because people have 2 weeks. So and the way, well, bylaw officers almost ran out of tickets for a few weekends. So I suspect we will be on budget with the parking fine revenue. And sure.
What percentage of people actually pay the fine?
It's gone up because you can now pay online, and almost everyone pays online. Actually, that's a good question. I don't have the statistic, because it does go to collections if it's not, so it does end up being a fairly high percentage, but I don't actually know the percentage.
It wasn't the previous report somebody gave us, so it was up there in the 2/3 to 3/4 range.
I think we finished the year at least 75% because it does go to collections. We send a reminder letter, and then after that it goes to collections. Of course, when it goes to collections and they collect, we don't get the full fee. So even if they collected 100%, we wouldn't be at 100%.
Okay.
But it's effective.
So then fine, as much as I...
Can I,
Yep.
can I just stay on that one?
Yep.
Before we could also do. So is this income up to the end of June? I'm talking about the parking pieces.
It would be to the end of June, but again, on a cash basis,
real cash,
because
not
we don't have an automated system like really large municipalities book the revenue as soon as they write the ticket, but we're not sophisticated enough to do that. We basically, I apologize, I thought you meant the parking fines.
Doesn't it show us an AR though?
No.
No?
Not
Okay,
the
well
parking
there's
fines. But the
there's
meters
issue.
are as well. We basically book it when we collect it. So we
that's-
get a report every month from ParkLink, so this included the June revenue from the parking meters.
So we're trending to more than double what we forecasted. If we're 6 weeks into a 17-week program, so it's going to come out to about 42,000. And on the other side, on the next page, where you look at the salaries for the bylaw officers, they're trending under by about 30%.
Well,
so
again,
it seems like we're going to do considerably better than we planned.
They're,
Is that right?
Yeah, they're under because we've only been paying them since May. Like, that budget is for 4 months, so we're not even halfway through their period yet. So,
Middle of May, so 6 weeks into.
yeah, so we're at 26%, but that would be their salaries for a month and a half, and they're here for 4 months.
Okay,
So, yeah.
good. Let me roll on to Councillor Abbott. So, nothing for several other pages. I'm going to page 49 of 260, the EOC. I understand the part about the salaries and benefits, but like material, building and equipment, tucking, they're not spending any dough?
Sorry, which side?
$7,500?
Well, that would be, that's actually equipment that we would do for our EOC, so it would be the new position would be looking at what we needed.
Okay, thank you.
So I wouldn't expect any spending on that
Good
yet.
answer on that one, thank you. I'm on page 53 of 260. And I see in brackets the term rebudget.
For,
Communication consultants and planning consultants.
yes.
And so I'm taking that to mean that since the actuals are 0,
The communications consultant came out of the strategic plan in 2018 that when we did things like DPAs, we recognized we might want to hire a consultant. So, and we chose to rebudget that because, again, we thought we might.
Okay.
It's just identifying anything we wanted to go to a public meeting with, if we wanted to use a consultant. And then the planning consultants, again, that was, we had actually budgeted for a position last year, so we didn't rebudget
that's
the full
more
amount.
adjustment. So it still is there in the budget, which is unspent. Thank you. And Councillor Abbott, it's yours. Oh, sorry, Barney.
Okay.
Good, Councillor Abbott.
Sorry, I might have misread this. So the salaries under planning was $12,000. That was under, I assume that was spending money on consulting, but it's not the consulting.
What page are you on?
Sorry, it's on the same page, 53.
Oh, sorry, I had flipped back to the beginning to get ready for your questions.
No, I was keeping up with the
Okay.
ping pong board.
So you're looking
So
at,
the planning consultant rebudgeted, there's 25,000 for a planning consultant, right?
yes,
That we haven't spent and we don't know if we're going to. But the salaries and benefits under planning and development, is that just prorated portion of sort of general
that's-
staff time or
no, that's our bylaw officer, that's our building inspector,
building inspector?
yes.
Ah, okay. Building inspection services. So I'm not getting. Salaries and benefits, we have got a budget of $40,000 for the year.
Mhm.
Who are those then?
That's Dave Butler. That's our building inspector.
You want him to work harder?
No? Okay, it's fine. Well, I guess the permits applications are done as well, aren't they? Yes. Okay. Right,
Well, he may have had some personal time away too.
no, but I think we also know to do this applications. On the next page, on page 54, number 2, on 2 in the notes, so it's this budget for invasive species. So what's the update there? Because we planned spending that months ago, so have we not done any of that work yet?
Their work
It's-
plan stretches from May to September, so they're doing periodic treatments
Okay.
all the way into
So we haven't
September.
paid a bill yet? Okay.
Yeah.
But they have started the work?
Yeah, I believe we're scheduled.
Yeah.
I've seen some information on it, but yes.
Yeah,
The work
there's
hasn't
gonna
been
be
done.
village updates as well. There'll be one, I think, this week,
Yeah. so,
or last week, sorry.
And they tend to, I could be wrong, but I think they just send us an invoice when all the work is done. So
Yeah.
we probably may not see an invoice until September, when the program is done, and then they invoice us.
On the next, well, on page 56, number 2 again, so we had a $75,000 budget for the water treatment plant engineering study. That was when we thought we were doing
Yes.
a one-off study one time.
Yes,
And now we
that's
spent
right.
21, or we've approved $21,000 or about. Yeah.
Yes,
Okay, so, but that would come out of this,
yes.
okay, so we'd be left with a shortfall if we ever did a big study. Overall study would be
Yes.
sort of fairly big shortfall on
Yes.
that.
It'll probably be into the next year as well.
Okay. To get credit for not doing the work.
It'll spread,
We'll
it'll
take the
spread
credit
over.
anyway. All right.
And on that note, it's the same with We had the repairs budgeted, a large amount for repairs. In sewer, or did we, sorry, what am I looking at?
No, it's in your other, it's in the other report that
It's in
follows.
the capital, sorry, yeah, it's capital. But the same thing follows there, we budgeted the full amount, and depending on success of this study, then we could have a surplus there.
Page 58. See in the parking lot.
Yes.
You want to explain the 10 grand overrun? You want to?
That was a rebudget, and we had got detailed quotes, I guess, 2 years ago, and we had increased them, but I guess in hindsight, we should have gone out and got requoted on the paving, because it went up a lot more than we anticipated.
Yeah, and the amount of gravel that had to be moved to get the parking lot properly draining was a lot higher than we had anticipated. So we brought in a lot more gravel, and that's basically.
So the quantities went up?
Yeah.
Okay, but you didn't work yourself, right, except for the paving?
Except for the paving, yeah.
So was the paving, was an old quote that just got
Yeah, basically.
escalated?
Yeah, 2017, early 2017, and it was, yeah.
We did increase it, but clearly not enough. In hindsight, we should have got another quote.
On the top of the next page, 59, we can assume we've bought the server now and we just have it, and that's what cost $17,000, and we just have...
It was servers and two desktops. It was a variety of things that had been budgeted in 2018, and we purchased them early 2019, and then we just had 2 new desktops. That was the only real increase to the budget, and we will be purchasing those.
So we're on track with that?
So we should be on track, yeah.
Okay, I'm good.
Good, if we can come back to me for a second. 2 small ones, and this is on page 58. Before I hand back to the Public Works Manager. The community signage, is that likely to be in place in the next 60 days or so?
60 days, yes.
Good, thank you.
Yeah.
The wheelchair accessibility, I guess really the big time for people coming to the hall be the Remembrance Day, which is November. Things happen so quickly, so are we hoping that this is all done, the wheelchair access, by next council meeting? It's 2 months out.
Yeah, it's planned for August.
Perfect.
During the break.
Thank you very much. And lastly, because you and I were here earlier, I got the update, but could you give everybody a brief one on the Harvey Reserve Tank?
So basically, we're in a holding pattern. There's been a delay. The pipe work in between the actual treatment plant building and the actual, the new tank is defective and needs to be replaced. So engineers are working on that design. They're hoping to implement that installation next week sometime, but it is shifting the schedule by a week or 2 off.
So it's preventing the construction of the tank?
Those valves basically aren't seating properly, so they're not closing, and it's seeping water into the foundation zone. So they need that to be able to meet compaction.
Okay.
So those need to be replaced before any further work happens.
So it's not the supply line coming from the treatment plant to there, it's just the valves and...
It's the supply line feeding the tank. So from the treatment plant to the tank, those lines need to be replaced.
Oh, the whole line does?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you have any idea on the time for that?
To do the work?
Yeah.
It won't take long. It won't take more than a day. It's all going to be built off-site, put in. But the problem is that the tank is running nearly continuous. So it means we'll have to put the system down for some time. We're going to try and do it in between fill cycles, but it doesn't leave us a lot of time. Time frame for doing the work is within a week or 2.
And the impact on the overall schedule as well?
A week or 2.
And end game completion estimated?
I forget what the original was. I think end of September, so a couple of weeks on top of that.
Mid-October, fine,
Yeah.
thank you. Any other questions on this topic? If not, then I'll put forward the motion that the report 2019 preliminary mid-year review be received for information purposes. Can I have a seconder? Any discussion? None, all in favor? Confirmed, thank you. Public Works Manager, your batter's up.
So essentially, we went to RFP for engineering on the wastewater treatment plant. The RFP is attached to the package. The RFP spoke to the idea that the termination of the contract, if MOE is not amenable to our plan. The two higher bids didn't really factor that into their bids. Their bids included portions of work that were at that next stage. If MOE does turn us down, those two proponents talked about and priced further studies. The third proponent is the proponent that has worked on several other plants of a similar nature. His proposal was specific to the work that we requested. So I'm recommending that we award to that proponent.
All right.
In a nutshell.
All right, the suggested motion is before us. I'll presume staff is unchanged, so I'll put forward that motion. Can I have a seconder? Any discussion?
Yeah, a couple of things. We have a further discussion on this being closed, right? So for information,
It's there for if necessary purposes. So if you want to have that discussion and ask further questions, then we would table this right now and either go into closed immediately or deal with it when we get to closed and then come back to this at the end of the meeting.
Yeah, we can deal with it when we get to closed, because my question is pertinent to the information that's in the closed section, so I can't really ask it.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Table. Okay.
So if we don't decide today, the next time we meet is when?
No, we're going to deal with it in closed.
I'm just looking at timelines.
Timelines, an hour.
Tonight.
Maybe less if we're quick. CAO, pressure's on you.
We're on the next item. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I'm on my A game tonight. You probably noticed that.
Yeah. Well, you'll have to sort of wait
tool it back. I know.
So I don't have much to provide you with. We have 221 completed records, 143 incomplete records, for a total of 365. Our new Deputy Emergency Program Coordinator is working on getting up to speed on that, and he will update, educate, and communicate with all of us and community going forward with respect to the LB alert, and so look for further information on and trying to push that in different ways to the community to sign up.
Do we have something functioning though, or is it all just in the works towards that?
Yeah, no, it
Tests.
It could function. I think that we've got a number of steps that people are not completed in, and that we need to further the process before we can do a test.
Oh, okay.
I think we're not quite to this point where we can do a test. I think we need to push it and then do that and see what that looks like.
Good, thanks.
So is there an idea when we might try it? Where do you think a test is? The next few months? Or?
Yeah, I would say in the fall, perhaps even associated with the shakedown, if not sooner, because I think a test in and of itself is going to help promote people signing up for it, I hope, and we can run some educational and promotional campaigning with that. And some word of mouth may then go out with people who have experienced the test and,
Yeah, I expect there's a big spike when you do a test.
Yeah.
Everyone's, did your phone go off? No, mine did.
yeah,
Wow.
right.
I would hope there's a big spike.
Yeah.
That's what I was
There's a lot
curious.
of people that haven't completed that second step of the registration process.
So we need some sort of education on that. I'm not even sure what you're referring to now. I signed up.
Yeah, no, I know, we have let it fall off the table, and that's on us, but we need to, we're gonna make sure that it gets moved forward expeditiously, so that will happen with the new body.
Mm-hmm.
Look puzzled, Councillor Bain?
I can't think of what the second step
No,
was.
look.
It's an internal EPACT process-oriented thing.
Oh, it's not something residents have to take a second step in registering?
They have to register with EPAC.
Have we done that yet? I can't recall doing that.
Fill out a profile for yourself.
Yeah,
We
well,
did.
we're gonna have to put education material out on that, so we'll check,
Yeah.
yeah.
Even those of us that thought we signed up aren't sure anymore.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we are nowhere.
I don't think I'm fully signed up then.
Yeah, we'll check. We can say, those people that haven't completed that step, we can target them via the email that they've provided and send them a second reminder saying, you haven't completed the process, here's what you need to do to complete.
Okay,
So, it's part of the EPACT system that we can do.
okay, good, thanks.
Good. Any further questions? No, thank you. Next item. CAO information report, transit survey results. So we let you give a top of the mountain overview.
Yeah, so it was quite interesting. We got quite a few more responses over the weekend on both this one and the film survey. I don't know that it really changed the overall perspective, which I've outlined in my report, which really kind of indicates that you know, of the people who do use the service, there seems to be consistent feedback that that it's there's gaps and it's not consistent service. That people don't always, or the buses don't always come on time or show up at all, which can leave people stranded, which is certainly a very bad result and a disincentive for people to take the bus. But it did indicate that you know, there are quite a few people who are using the service, and people would like to see it improved and expanded if possible. Some people had ideas about maybe doing something other than this service, but that's got a lot of different. It's not as simple as it would sound to simply, you know, hire your own bus and hire a couple of people to drive it and so forth. That's a fairly substantive undertaking. But certainly the final results and the comments, all of the comments, I think we ended up at 170 responses. And we'll forward that to both TransLink and West Vancouver staff with a request that they follow up on some of the issues that we've identified, and I'll look forward to reporting back on that.
Thank you. And would you think that follow-up would be, let's say, before the end of the year, so maybe December?
Yeah, I would hope so.
Okay, if we could, I think that would be very good, and I know that the TransLink people are frustrated with the relationship at times, and I think the survey shows a lot of the issues very clearly. Okay, thank you. Well, let's do this the other way then. So I'll put forward the motion that the information report transit survey results is received. Can I have a second? Any discussion on the topic? Yes, Councillor Evans?
Just one observation. I was trying to look through the survey to see if I could work out how many people use Park Royal as a parking lot. Because I do it regularly. Well, it's my most frequent way of using transit. I do it not far more often than I catch the bus from here, just for the convenience. But you can't find that in the survey, the way the questions were answered. I mean, I don't know if there's any, but I don't know if there's any other way of doing it now. I'm not suggesting we redo the survey. But I know I see a dozen faces I recognise from Lions Bay in time from Park Royal. So maybe if you can just weave that into the report, maybe they can look at, well, you can't even tell by ridership because you don't know where someone's card's coming from, so it's hard to tell. But I think it is a fact. I think a lot more people park and ride from Park Royal than we might believe, but unfortunately we didn't capture it.
So one of the things that was explained to me by TransLink was essentially the first time, if you got a Compass card, the first time you tap it, they make the assumption statistically that you're from that municipality. So if you drive to Park Royal and get on the bus there and tap your card, they're going to assume that you're a resident of West Vancouver. And if you pay cash, you're a statistical nothing. You don't show up.
Buy your Compass card before you leave work and do it on the way home, they will think you live downtown.
You know, my aide-de-camp frequently has nothing to do at 8 o'clock on a variety of mornings during the week, and I think he could probably do a little random walk around the park and ride it there and see how many of those beautiful stickers remain on the back of the windshields while they still do. And we might get a sense of what we're talking about here. I too thought about the park and ride piece too, because it's a mid-ground between the full solution and the partial solution.
I could do a random survey of that on my way home. It wouldn't make any sense we do in the morning because I leave very early, so no one's.
Well, I don't know what people.
But I came home early one day and went to the park and ride at 4 o'clock or 3. Most people are working, still work. I actually walk around because it's not that far and see if I can stickers up and stuff. I'll try that.
Okay, me too. Well, it's like that.
Unscientific.
Killing my
Yeah.
I know you want data.
Make
Okay.
decisions.
Don't look too hard in the windows, the cops might come.
Yeah, those little golf carts, I love those things. There you go. All right, any other discussion? Motion to receive, all in favor? Thank you, unanimous. Next one, CAO, filming in Lions Bay. Let me just give you 2 sentences of thank you for the depth and breadth of this. And again, if you could give your top of the mountain thoughts before we get into it.
Okay, by way of update, we jumped up quite a few responses that over the weekend that I didn't have time to vet before tonight's meeting. I think we're up to a total of about 170 responses on that survey as well. Previously, I think we were down around 114 perhaps. So the gist of this, I think, is that you know, we've had filming policies of different sorts over the many years since the turn of this millennium, and I think there were issues in the early 2000s that came to light, and that resulted in the policy of 2009, which was quite restrictive and really gave the decision-making power to residents that were directly impacted, and directly impacted was defined as being either within direct line of sight of filming or filmed vehicles and their equipment, or within earshot. I think that, you know, as one of the things that might have been actually left out of that equation is lights and lighting at night. You don't necessarily, you know, you can be impacted not necessarily by seeing what's going on line of sight or hearing something, but the sky around you and outside your bedroom window could be, very bright. And that was spoken to in terms of impacts by the Creative BC folks here tonight. So not all productions obviously are created equal, and some are going to have more impacts than others. And there is something to that, I think, in terms of council considering how to handle this going forward, is considering the extent of impacts and how to weigh those impacts for the community and for different people in the community. There are, the only real safeguard or avenue that someone has who is significantly impacted, if they are, is to barter for a hotel and per diems or other perks. And while that's on the one hand an opportunity for residents, if your bartering skills aren't the greatest, where does that leave you? Are you going to get the Motel 6 and somebody else is going to get the Hyatt? I don't know. I think that for the most part, the way these work, the production companies work, is they've got a budget, and they can anticipate that a certain number of people are going to be impacted, depending on what kind of a film they're doing, and whether they're filming at night, and whether it's multi-day, and so forth. So they can budget for that in terms of knowing that some people are going to be wanting to be elsewhere. So that is one way in which impacts can be addressed and dealt with. But there are other aspects to this that I have observed, and in the short time that I've had exposure to filming and applications that come forward, I have noticed that they do tend to happen very last minute, and it's a case of having to reorganize staff priorities. And I'm speaking of productions where they're multi-day and they need council dispensation for noise bylaw or parking or so forth. And because we've got to get to council in time, so it's got to be organized and put together, and it's often a moving target. And that can be a bit frustrating from my perspective. So setting up clear guidelines that require sufficient notice is one way of dealing with that. And another is to provide through a bylaw. It doesn't have to be a filming bylaw, but it could be a delegation bylaw, where council would delegate the decision-making authority in accordance with a clear set of guidelines or policies to the CAO in order to deal with applications in a timely way. And that's, I think, what a lot of, what most jurisdictions do. I'm not going to read out all the things that I've written down here, but I think that I think there's a lot of information here. There's a lot of differing views, obviously, that are reflected in the survey material. There does seem to be a preponderance of people who feel that filming should be accommodated, provided that impacts can be mitigated for residents. So it's really, I think, a case of council digesting this material over a bit of time and thinking about, I think, firstly, what are the objectives for any film policy for Lions Bay? The two that are in these materials are quite different. They lay out different objectives, and they lay out different ways of achieving those objectives. And I think council's going to have to determine which of those objectives this council is comfortable with, or are there other objectives that aren't even indicated in either of those policies that ought to be on the table for discussion. And then once those objectives are known and some of the key contentious points are brought forward, or council has an opportunity to provide their opinion and views on, then I think staff can work with that and towards fashioning a policy that can then be further discussed by council to try and get to a point where everybody's satisfied with the outcome. I don't think everybody will ever be super happy, but staff needs clear direction, and the community, I think, needs to know that council has laid out a clear path forward, and in order to achieve objectives that are clearly stated, and staff's job will really be, I think, to figure out the best way to implement those objectives and provide something that works efficiently and smoothly and protects as many people's interests as possible.
Thank you very much for the overview. Okay, let's formalize this part of the discussion then. So,
can I just add one thing? Just in terms of process, my suggestion would be, and I laid out 4 different options. I think 1A is the suggestion that I would make in terms of getting this to a point where it will be easier for council to have a discussion about something that reflects its objectives and views, set out in a draft policy that could be discussed at a council strategy committee meeting in the fall.
Okay. Ben, thank you very much, CAO. So we can get this on the formal basis then. So the request is that council provide direction to staff with respect to the issues outlined in this report, so that we can get to that. I think if you look at page 121, it's options to pursue desired results. I will put forward a motion which is number 1 and carries over to the second page. And I'll look for a second, and then we'll go to discussion. And yep.
Second.
Yes, that's a second. Thank you. You fooled me with that. How quick that was. There you go. You're on your game too. I like that. God. Okay. All right. Thank you. We're in play. This is a discussion thing. I really take the CIO's points to heart, and I like the very there's not a lack of information. And this council is not a lazy council, and they're quite prepared to get into the nits of all this stuff. But I feel that as this crew, this council has done things, we want to do one thing, we want to do it well, and we want to finalize it. And I feel that we should take a bit of a break here and bring this back to the table again after we've had some time to reflect on it. And it may well be that we do a CSC to flesh that out so that we can really refine our ask of the staff. For the other choices here, item number 2 does not resonate with me, number 3 certainly doesn't, and number 4 it's kind of a Hail Mary. I don't even know which direction that ball's going. So that's my thoughts on it, and I please welcome discussion. This is a weighty topic. I can see that for Councillor Bain and I, who are almost at the end of our 8th year of sitting here and talking about filming, there's been so much conjecture on it, and we've gone from a point where it was just an ironclad no policy and majority ruled to a bit of an opening. And when you look at the numbers on the daily fees or the number of shoots, I mean, the common theme I saw was that it's the overwhelming theme was a commitment to the revenue for the village, but also they wanted the residents to be happy if they're going to proceed with this. So I think we need some work to do. Open for discussion. Councillor Bain, you're up.
Well, one of the questions that I don't think is really clearly put out that would give the direction is what you're basically alluding to, is that, and I don't take this as a negative that I'm saying this, but we have to ask the question, what is the what is there in it for the Lions Bay as a community? When I look at some of the fee schedules, for example, I think it's not a money-making deal for us, because I think there's a net loss for a lot of the things. When you look at staff time and you look at rentals, like, well, the one I used before was $100 for an hour for the fire truck. Well, it's just absurd. I mean, you're not going to send the fire truck out with less than 4 people on it. And at the bare minimum, each member makes at least $20 an hour. So you're basically going to be losing money. So there's nothing in it for the village. I don't think everything, when I ask the question, what's in it for the village, has to be monetary or tangible or anything. But if somebody could convince me that there is a real benefit to having it here, it would make the decision making a lot easier, I think. But now it just seems like an elusive goal we're going after, and I don't really get it, quite frankly. It's just, I hear all the complaints about it. It disrupts the neighborhood. Oh, it's great having some activity going in the village here. I mean, there's arguments from both sides, but why are we doing this? Maybe there is a good reason.
Can I allude to something that made me, with what you're talking about? I tend to agree with you in terms of fee structure. Something that one of the presenters mentioned near the end was keeping your fee structure reasonable so that domestic productions can afford them. And there seemed to be a suggestion that more at a lower rate is a better return than less at a higher rate. And that really depends upon your objectives in your community and what kinds of locations you have to accommodate filming, I think. It made me think of the accommodation business that I'm quite familiar with, and that is a definite consideration. Even with a high-end home, you don't want to price it so high that you only get a few renters and expect to make your expected return that way. Some owners tend to feel that way, but you do have to sort of find a place where you have volume, but not too much, because you don't want to wear something out. Same sort of thing here. I think that I would suggest tending to the higher side. I don't think you have to ask the moon, but you don't want to chase everybody away. But I think that is an important consideration, particularly since these are matters where staff is expected to shift priorities and accommodate them on a short notice basis. So that was one of my thoughts on that. The other thing is that in the presentation that we saw tonight, there was a slide that talked about community benefits, and one of those was contributions to local charities or community groups, and she mentioned that there's a number of initiatives that exist for productions to contribute to, like she mentioned, North End and Langley. So that might be something worth looking into, whether it's something that we can establish a clear policy so that production companies know, oh, you want to come to Lions Bay, you should be looking at their objectives, and one of those objectives is contribution to this fund or that fund, and it might not even be limited to Lions Bay. It might be more of a regional, but I would say more Lions Bay focused than anything else. So those were a couple of thoughts that I thought of with respect to what you just said.
Can I have a follow-up on that? Has anybody, rather than having a basic fee, now this may sound like it's coming way out of left field, but when a house is being put up for rent for the filming and everything, I don't know exactly how much they make, but would it make sense that the municipality would get a portion of that as a percentage? And that would be your fee?
Well, that was actually one of the questions that was in the survey in terms of requiring the homeowner to take out a permit, and the municipality would make its money that way. But I guess that's, and I asked one of the gals earlier today whether there's any communities that do that. She said no. Nobody does that. And in hindsight, I kind of thought, I don't know if that would actually work in terms of, I thought initially you could set it up as a temporary use permit, but there are advertising requirements that go with that under the Local Government Act, so time-wise, I don't know that that would actually work all that well. But there are certainly things that we could look at in terms of policies and objectives and fulfilling, doing something that makes sense for Lions Bay so that there is something in it for the community. Certainly that's got to be part of the overall piece.
So on that theme, if I pitch this to you, that, let's say for the sake of argument, the homeowner, and we don't know what they've negotiated, but we ask them to contribute to an Lions Bay charity. Are we offside with anything in the charter there?
I think that as long as it's not mandatory, that if it's something that is set out as a policy objective, and that there are goals that we're trying to achieve through having a policy that enables filming to take place, that that people, I think, would be amenable to contributing to that, and without having to be hit over the head with it, or
percentage or something,
a stated percentage or anything like that, because I think it's going to vary widely on the type of production and how much they get, and what they have to go through themselves. So,
good. Councillor Cunliffe, any questions?
No, more just a comment that it is the third largest filming hub in North America, and we need a policy. We can't just be a hard no. I don't think that's reasonable. There are many people that live in our community that work in that industry. A lot of our children will end up in that industry. It's one of the growing industries, so we need something in place and something reasonable, I feel. So I would like to take more time and do it well.
Good, thank you. Councillor Abbott?
A few things. So I really scribbled a bunch of stuff all over the place here. But I think from what you're describing, when you said we're going to 1, recommendation 1, you mean 1A through to F, not just 1A, right?
The whole package.
Well, actually, no. I was thinking 1A was the idea that council would, because you're going to have to provide your feedback in order for me to draft anything.
Right.
So if you did that prior to...
So that's just the first step. 1B is set up a CSC. 1C is...
We would definitely have like a CSC, but
So
I think it'd be more efficient to have that CSC. Staff would bring a draft policy based upon the feedback that council provides via email ahead of time over the course of the summer, or whatever that period is.
So can I just confirm, CSC is a committee of the whole, right?
Yeah.
So we typically do that, they used to do it in the afternoon, we used to go on forever, and I guess that's why we don't use that word anymore.
That's why they were terminated.
But it's the structure of the organisation is the same thing. It's council meeting with slightly less formality, but has the same.
Yeah, open to the public, recorded, the whole 9 yards.
Probably try to do it, depending how big the issue was,
Probably
before a council meeting.
try and work at pre-council meeting or something like that later.
Or I mean, for something like this, I would suggest that you do it in between council meeting weeks. So you got a council meeting on the 17th of September, do this on the 24th, just by itself at 7 o'clock.
And one
person's
going to object to it. I had, as we discussed previously on the calendar, plan my work schedule, all my business trips, so I get every second week to go away.
Right.
So the chances are, if you do it that week, I can never attend any.
Right.
But that's another matter.
But that means starting earlier in the afternoon, which is...
Or the follow-up day or whatever. We can deal with that later. That's why I asked that previously.
Yeah.
Because I have planned business trips.
Okay,
for
well,
those weeks.
I think for me the key piece is that we're in play here. I mean,
Yeah.
the date is less relevant to me.
No, I wasn't trying to set the day. I was just... Okay, so... So I know what a committee of the whole is because I see the committee charter. I didn't know what a CSC was, so that's why I was trying to ask that question. But it's the committee, if I committee charter, I can read committee of the whole.
Yes.
For some reason we just gave it a different name. Okay. Good kill, a committee of the whole? Guess not. I see this as a kind of stage gate process. I think, first of all, we do have to need a new policy. We all agree, yes, I think we've got to that one. For me to provide comments, I'd like to comment on something. I looked at these two documents, and yes, there's good and bad in both documents. And the stuff I like in the first one, I like the second one better. But the second one also has a lot more information, all these minutes. There was clearly a lot of input. Personally, I would think input was done with best intention, with a lot of effort, and we shouldn't throw it away. I would like to comment on that draft policy, because that's how far previous councils got, rather than go back to phase one and start to give a list and start somewhere else. That's my personal view. It's just staging it. Yes, we need a policy. Do we want to base it on the original policy or the draft that came out in 2014 after a whole lot of extra work? And I think that's what I would like to comment on. Otherwise, I'm just not. I like to comment on something, just rather than make comments.
Could certainly approach it that
That's
way.
my opinion, my preference. And if that's the case, I mean, my comments are ready to go. You can have them fairly soon on in an email.
Good. Councillor Barmeyer?
I feel like I'm observing a real appetite for some vibrancy in the village. And it's not just focused on the filming policies, but people seeking exceptions to noise bylaws on their private property, relaxation of parking so they can have a party and they can listen to music and have fun with their neighbors. We've got a business that's looking to add some vibrancy to the community, seeking some relaxation of what could be construed as somewhat dated or tired policies around noise mitigation. We've got a film industry that's over the last 2 years that I've been on council made applications that I've met with no credible objection. So there's clearly a flavor in the village to support the arts, to listen to music, to have some fun, to inject some energy into the community. So as a council, I feel that's our responsibility to listen to those cues and make our policies fall in line with that. As far as getting into the nitty-gritty details of a filming policy, yeah, I have some comments to make, but I really think that is a bit outside my depth. So I'm happy to provide some commentary, but in general, my sense is that we need to relax a bit, and we need to start letting people have some fun in the village.
All right then. We could go around again, or I think we've all settled that, in fact, that we are going to baby step this forward then, and that we are going to do the A part, which is sending the comments to CA over the next couple of weeks, or certainly within a month, and then this will come forward again on the 17th in whatever format the AO chooses to bring it. Is that your read at this, Mr. DeJong?
Yeah, I think, I think that without setting a date right now, we don't need to do that, but I could
Say respond
seek.
within 3 weeks and you
Yes.
bring it up on the 17th?
Yeah, I mean, I'll bring something to the meeting on the 17th, and it may simply be that it's to set a date for a more in-depth discussion based on a draft that you might get first glance at and provide comment on, or initial comment for a more in-depth discussion. That might work.
Yes, Councillor Abbott?
Shouldn't we have a CSC before draft policy? Shouldn't we ask the residents? I know they've all participated before, but it's 4-5 years old. Shouldn't we be trying to get the residents' input prior to doing a draft policy?
Would that be what the survey was, or?
That's what the survey did.
That's what the survey was.
Yeah.
So we're going to draft a policy and then have a CSC where we're going to present a policy to residents. Okay.
Well, I think it's just a case of trying to incorporate all of council's feedback into something, put some ideas on paper.
As a draft.
Yeah, as a draft for discussion. I think is probably the best way to go about moving it forward.
providing some parameters for discussion.
Yeah, I mean, there are things that I think are good in the first policy and things that are good in the second, but there's also things that I think don't work in either one.
Mhm.
So I wouldn't wholeheartedly endorse the second draft policy. But certainly there's things in both that I would look to pull into a new draft policy with incorporating all of the comments that council provides. And then bring that forward so that
I just
you
thought
can.
the second one was closer to where I think we're trying to go. It's
You may be
a
right.
positive policy as opposed to using not to do things. It was a policy that trying to create the framework for getting something done, to have some fun, as opposed to why we don't like fun.
And I think that, as you pointed out, through the minutes that were attached to that material, that was a process that, was a year in the making. And
It took some considerable effort. We certainly shouldn't throw it away.
Definitely.
Good points. Last round of discussion before I call a motion. There being none, calling the motion. All in favor as recommended? Thank you. Passed. Thank you very much for the hard work on that one, Mr. Dijon. CFO?
Sorry, before we go on, it was just on the table, this table here. I think these addresses are on. This is 105 Tidewater, not Brunswick Pit.
There are pages.
That's the spreadsheet.
The spreadsheet, page 158. I think someone's just copied that cell down that says Brunswick Road, or Brunswick Pit, because that midnight kiss was the one that happened at 185 times over, wasn't it?
That's not the sheet.
Sorry,
Oh, yeah.
156.
No.
Sorry, 156, I don't want to.
There it is.
Halfway down the page,
Mm-hmm.
or towards the bottom section. See, there's a list of, and it says Brunswick Pit on all of those. I don't think that's accurate.
Right.
Or Midnight Kiss, for example, that's the one we dealt with here, that was 185 times.
Yeah,
So I'm not sure how many others are wrong.
Right, yeah, no, that was Tidewater.
Maybe it's just the one.
Nice, yeah, but I'll double check that.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. Okay, CFO. I've got the earlier number to be out of here, so get going.
I have a later number, so I'll talk slow. Yes, we, in the 2019 budget, we included money for the second phase of the asset management plan. So we applied for a grant, which I had mentioned, and we've been successful with that grant. And we issued the RFP on June 27th, and it closed on Friday, July 12th. And we had 3 applications, and staff reviewed the applications according to the evaluation criteria, which were on page 8 of the RFP, and are recommending that we award the contract to Your City Solutions, Inc. in the amount of $29,950 plus GST. I've attached this is the RFP, but essentially we were looking at experience, reputation, and resources at 30%, approach and methodology 40%, and price at 30%. The $29,950 was the lowest price, but also the person who, Your City Solutions Inc., the person who owns that company, did our asset management report with Urban Systems. So they got a lot of points for experience, and they basically did the first phase of our asset management plan. So, and I think they specialize in small municipalities. A lot of the asset management RFP responses we get this time and last time, they're used to doing larger municipalities, and smaller municipalities are very unique in terms of just basically, we don't have a GIS system. We're just very different from larger municipalities. So that this proponent got a lot of points for that, because they basically, their whole business is structured around really smaller municipalities and meeting the needs of smaller municipalities. So to me, they were sort of the overwhelming choice in terms of the review of the 3 RFPs, and that's why we're recommending their selection.
So was Urban Systems one of the bidders?
No, they did not bid, actually. But there was someone who worked at Urban Systems, Corey, who did the presentation, has formed his own company, Your City Solution, and he bid on it. So he's basically, although he's with a different company, he is essentially the key component of phase one of the asset management plan.
Is
So
that the same
that,
guy presented to us?
yes.
Yes.
And are the other bidders, is there a table of the other bidders in here or not?
We could talk about that at closed.
Okay.
So,
Did you
table for closed discussion?
Table for closed?
Sure, I was
Well,
looking at
you
details.
want the other numbers, so, although. Okay, we'll table that. Thank you. Okay, and next up is the mayor who has nothing. Council members, anything? Nope. That done. Committees, board of variance, the minutes are here. And these are from information purposes, so first this is their going at a time, the February 26th, which is, quite frankly, I found both of these fascinating reading. I mean, I got past the elevating garage with the car thing. I think we should all have one of them. There you go. For the first one, but good stuff all around. So, we're being asked that the council receive the Feb 26th Board of Variance meeting minutes for information. I'll put forward that motion to the seconder. Hard to discuss something that's done, but there we go. All in favor? Fine, thank you, passed. Same for April 23rd.
Can I just say one thing on the Board of Variance?
Pardon?
Can I just say one thing on the Board of Variance?
Please do.
I attended the meeting out of curiosity. We should all try it sometime. Quite interesting.
And how did you find it?
Very interesting, very well conducted.
The professionalism of these people is just, like I said, it's the most fascinating reading I've had. And not the easiest cases either.
But it's a very complimentary, volunteering sort of effort.
There you go.
Some good service there.
Thank you for your profile on that, Councillor Abbott. All in favor of receiving the minutes for April 23rd? Take that as unanimous, thank you. We are done on that. And, resolutions. All waiting for this. Okay. So the first one up is the relaxation of bylaws on 39 Brunswick Beach. And we heard a bit about it last week, and CAO was going to give us an update.
So I did convey council's requests from the last meeting, and the applicant has tried to get hold of neighbors when she's home, but she works all day and hasn't had much success other than she sent me a copy of the signatures of her immediate next door neighbors on either side of her. And indicated as well that the event is to be capped at 70 participants, and last time out she had 44 or 45 Brunswickers and a couple of other Lions Bayers. So that those numbers haven't, she hasn't indicated any real change in that at this point. She indicated that she is prepared to coordinate the parking within the parking restrictions that are in place. So that means having neighbors assist with parking and using guest passes where she can for the few spots that are there. And she also confirmed that it will be on her property and not on the beach. And that's the extent of the update.
Pretty much think you rounded the horn on that one, because those were the items that we'd asked you to investigate.
Oh, and I did also suggest that the bus would be an option now that it runs till 11 o'clock. So she said that she would look into that too.
Thank you very much. So then, the sole item remaining, although I thought in the minutes that we passed this one from the noise bylaw from 5 to 8:30.
No, we tabled it.
We tabled it?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. So what is before us is from the minutes, you could read what we did last time and what the CAO has just given us. So the motion which I'll put forward so we can get to the decision is that council relax the noise bylaw to allow live music from 5 p.m. until 8:30 p.m. at 39 Brunswick Beach Road on August 5th of 2019. I'll put that forward. Can I have a second? Discussion? From my perspective, I believe the CFO has come back with the right answer on all the questions that we did. I would be supporting this. Any other discussion? Call the motion. All in favor? Passed. Thank you. Should be so quick on the next one. Okay. Starting to sweat a little bit. All right, so we have all of our stuff here, thank you. Okay, so resolution B, which is the relaxation of noise bylaw, general store and cafe. So as the CAO points out to me, it's one of the few prerogatives that I have that I ask that the resolution be brought back for reconsideration. And it is before you. And just to go to the end before we get to the beginning, we've seen lots of correspondence, we've seen lots of presentations, and here we are, and we've seen videos. So the motion is before you. And although Mr. Doherty has suggested with his new schedule, now that I'm kind of ad-libbing here, he's only going to do Saturdays. If I got that right.
Correct. Well, more markedly, he's taken it back to 6 p.m. as well, not 8.
Okay, got a lot of data on this stuff. Where it is, latest thing get to.
On the last page of the thing that Craig handed out. Yeah, mine.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, so to recap then, Councillor Abbott, as I see this, presuming these are all Saturdays, fine. And we're at the end of the season, fine. And it is put to 6. So, very good, thank you. And does he say in his stuff here, so he's stuck with he's changed his schedule and the times, but the motion stands as it is. Is that how you see this, CAO?
Well, it's up for reconsideration, so council,
Okay.
council can do with it as you please.
Cut and paste, all right. Okay. So then we'll go with the what we have in front of us, that council relax the noise bylaw to allow for live amplified music on the patio at the general store and cafe on Friday, Saturday, Sundays, and holiday Mondays through to the end of the summer between the hours of noon and 8, weather permitting at the discretion of the store or cafe owner. Just to get this going, I'll put forward the motion. Can I have a second? Live discussion, please. Who would like to go first? Councillor Abbott. Okay, we'll go alphabetical.
I think Mr. Doherty is being reasonable. I think he's tried to find a compromise. I think by putting out a schedule which gives people some notice, and the one that takes last time, there are people around their birthday that can go on their deck, so they can plan. And I'm sure if there was some really, really pressing reason why they didn't like a night, I'm sure he'd listen to it. So I think he's shown to be reasonable. He's trying to find a compromise. Personally, I'm in favour of it. I do notice that on the schedule that not every day is a Saturday, because there's a Lions Bay Art Council thing which is not, which that's a side. I'm not sure that has music. But anyway, I don't know how to reword it. Maybe as per the schedule submitted.
I think. Well, I think we're coming to the same piece here. So these are all Saturdays, so that's fine. So I think where you're going here is that if you look on page 3 of 260, second sentence, and you deleted Fridays, left Saturdays, deleted Sundays and holiday Mondays between the hours of noon and 6
And 6 p.m. what he's asked for.
p.m. weather permitting. I think that covers the thread of what you're asking.
Yeah, so he's asked for 3, between 3 and 6.
Okay.
There is, sorry.
Oh no, take your time. There's a lot of paper on the table.
For the beach fundraiser, what was noon to 3, wasn't it?
It's a playground fundraiser.
31st of August, so maybe leave it at noon? Just for flexibility in case of one.
I think noon to 6 is fine. Yep.
With respect to the weather permitting part, he did note at the end he was hoping for some flexibility, I think, in terms of the schedule if he gets rained out. So I don't know how council wants to deal with that. You know, whether you let him have it on the Sunday if it was going to be nice on the Sunday instead of the Saturday, I don't know.
I think that was his expectation. I think he was trying to, well, I asked that question, not sure. I think he was trying to set a maximum number. In some previous correspondence he said, we're not going to be doing it every night. So I think there was an attempt to set a maximum number with some flexibility.
Once a weekend?
Yeah.
Isn't it?
And that's the way to word it.
So just thank you very much, CAO. On the patio, so patio, general store and cafe, once a weekend. We can be vague about that. Alphabetically, Councillor Barmier, the fun guy. Give me some fun, Councillor Barmier.
In all fairness, his presentation as a delegation was a show of compromise, so I have to applaud him for that. He's running a business. I don't know what his hours are, I don't know how late he can stay open, I don't know what he could actually do there. Could probably be a far more imposing presence in that space. If he's running a business, he has the freedom to run a business. So in terms of modifying the language of the resolution, I support it. We're proposing one weekend day a week from 12 to 3. I think that's a reasonable ask. Or from 12 to 6, pardon me. But to me, this opens up, and I think this is just a separate discussion. I think we do need to just look at that bylaw in general, because amplified music is noise to one person, it's something nice to someone else. So focus on this word amplification when I really think we should be looking at decibels, and to keep it scientific, and look at a point of perception to make it fair for everybody. Because one person's idea of nice music could be total cat's meow to someone else. So we gotta start being a little more hands-off and a little more, I think, practical about some of these things. So there are some sample bylaws out there, and I deal with noise complaints all the time with the kind of work I do. Understand a little bit about point of perception, how these things can be measured, how bylaw officers can actually formally enforce things that are excessive, and so that's a separate discussion. But, okay.
All right, and should you champion that, we look forward to seeing
that.
that.
I don't mind at all, absolutely.
Good. Councillor Bain?
Well, I had a problem with the amplified music issue. You've got a good point there, though. I hadn't thought of that. And I sort of counted all the response of all the solicited emails that came our way. And of the 12, not counting the first one that came here, 8 of them made no mention of amplified music. Only 4 did. He has changed his story a little bit. Most of the people in favor of him were talking about the nice, gentle music, quiet, peaceful, and all that sort of thing. And I get it. It could be very nice. But when it comes to amplification, what I was thinking before Norm's comment, and I think decibels is the issue, partly the issue, is that, let me put it this way. Our eldest son used to play the guitar. And he has full pedal board and everything, 30-watt box amplifier if you want. And he could be playing it along nice and quiet, put a little foot at the ankle, and boom, up it goes because he's got a pedal on it. And that's the nature of it. You can start off nice and quiet, but they often push the pedal to boost it up for emphasis. That's just part of playing the music. And it's not like he was a beginner. On a weekend, he could be playing for 3,000 people, so it's not like he's used to this venue. And granted, on this venue, you really don't need this big sound. The other issue too is sound doesn't travel in straight lines. The higher the frequency it does, the lower the frequency the sound will bend, and it'll curl around. And I can really see that a high frequency sound will travel usually farther, but the lower frequency goes wider. And it's just, if you have a boat radio, you'll know where you can talk and where you can't, depending if you're UHF, VHF, or you're using an AM band. It's all the same deal. So I think his facts are a little bit off. But the big thing about amplified music I'm concerned about is if we agree to amplified music, it's no effort to crank it up, and we're not going to police that. And I do have concern for the neighbors, and especially a lady of the delegation last council meeting. I mean, for goodness sake, she's going to give birth to a little child, and she's going to be up through the night and everything. If she comes up with music coming through the floor, she and her husband are going to get kind of worn out on those days. I appreciate his compromise. I think it's a nice gesture. But I think there's a bit of naivety that the sound isn't going to go through. I went in to pick up our mail, I guess it was a couple of years ago, and the tenant above us was playing Fleetwood Mac's The Chain. And the penetration of bass notes just came right through the ceiling into the thing. If you're familiar with the tune, it's got quite a bass run that's really distinctive. I didn't miss a note. It was so clear coming through. So to Mrs. Shaw's point, that sound will be coming right up through her floor. The building isn't that well insulated. So with his consideration of cutting back on time and staying with acoustic guitars or whatever it is, non-amplified, I could see that. They can have fun. You don't have to make a lot of sound. It can be gentle, it can be peaceful, it adds to the ambience. Nobody's accusing them of being another AC/DC coming out here, but I think it's got to be geared to the community. And I think we have a resident farther away says that she can hear it as well. And by the way, this one too, they make no mention of amplified music. They like the thing. So I don't know. You can get my vote if you get away from the amplified music and put it in with the decibel level, but I don't want to walk out there and start taking measurements either, so I don't know.
Thank you. Councillor Conlon, just step to the microphone.
Well, I would agree with what Norm has to say about what is actually noise, and to say that unamplified music, I mean, amplified music being played at the Christmas craft sale is by no means invasive or obnoxious, and many people are wandering around buying things, and it's never overwhelming. So I think if it's done right, it is a tool as a musician and necessary to be able to use. It does need, we need to police the noise level, not what we're using. I mean, he could choose to not have live entertainment and just crank music in the store as loud as he wants. That would be his right. I think he's being very reasonable. Till 6 p.m. It is a mixed commercial zoning. It's the only in the village. It's unfortunate if that is not ideal for your resident, but it is that. So I think it's pretty reasonable, and to not even be using every one of those dates, just asking for the potential to use. I think there is a level of respect that is trying to be maintained here, and I think the onus probably is on us as a village to really kind of break down what, I think there's way more noise coming from motorcycles on the highway that are disruptive than a couple hours of somebody playing a guitar on a patio on a summer afternoon. So I would be in support of making an amendment to the resolution.
Thank you very much. We'll give everybody one more chance before we go this, so we'll go counterclockwise, ending with Councillor Conlon. Any other thoughts, Councillor Bain?
No, I said my bit.
Councillor Barmeyer?
Drum set. I guess anything else?
Councillor Abbott?
No, I've nothing more to say on this particular one, but, you know, as Councillor Barmayer was saying, and others have said, and we spoke about previously, this whole thing of concerts in the village, we need some sort of guidelines, rules for everyone to play by, but I think we have that plan to come later.
There we go. I would suggest on that, and if I could get the CAO to take a note, that for our strategy section, this is one of our topics of where we want to put some horsepower or not, which would be the split combination parking, noise, house concert, decibel reading. Let's call it a big jump package for the sake of argument. If that could come back to us in that format. And this one, anybody have any final comments before I call the motion? So, if I will be calling the motion in a second, and so the motion is that council relax the noise bylaw to allow for live amplified music on the patio at the general store and cafe on Saturdays, no, on 1 day per weekend. How do we deal with long weekend on that?
1 day per weekend.
1 day per weekend, thank you. Through to the end of the summer. Fine, that's just the end of this year. Between the hours of noon and 6 p.m. weather permitting. Yada yada. Okay, done. Call a motion. All in favor? Presume it's unanimous. Nope. Nope. Dissent. Councillor Bain, you're recorded. Thank you very much. Acting CAO CO resolution, and I think this one's pretty straightforward. That the Public Works Manager, Nazim Jaffer, be appointed acting CAO and gets to wear the official crown, and acting corporate officer for the period August 28th to August 30th, 2019, in the absence of CAO DeJong and CFO Rook. I'll put forward the motion. Give it a second. Any discussion? I know. Please tell me it isn't so.
Spend, baby, spend.
Hey.
That's right. He'll be hanging out at the cafe complex.
It's just excuse me, it's acting CAO CO, not acting CFO.
There you go. Define
No
that.
one gets my crown.
All right. I'm gonna call my other prerogative. I'm going to stop the discussion. Call the motion. All in favor? Done. Thank you. Bylaws. There are none this week. Correspondence and Councillor Barmayer, thank you for your term. This is the last one. And hard to believe.
Yeah, there's a lot of...
Councillor Cunliffe batters up next September, this September.
The first three are UBCM resolutions, are just for information, nothing for us to do. The rural dividend program, I guess they're basically saying there's no funding for us in that.
Yes, thank you, and go away.
Yeah.
Yes.
I have a question on the first three. Sorry to go past them so fast. Not to let you get past.
He's on a roll here.
I'm just trying to go home.
So the UBCM, who's going to the UBCM? Who typically goes, and how does it normally work? I mean, do we discuss some of these issues with council, and the mayor, if he's the only one going, get some idea what council would like them to support and not support? Or, because there's a few issues in here that, you know, I some comments on whether I think we should or shouldn't be supporting. Is that how it works?
I'll just give you the quick skinny. I will not be going to the UBCM. If somebody else would like to, then...
I just want to circle back on, that's come up a few times during correspondence.
Yeah.
So the opportunity to send a delegate and the opportunity to set up meetings. So there's representatives there that you can set up a meeting with, and that's part of... so this is not new.
No, but it's getting closer. So 3rd of August is the deadline for the early registration.
That all said, I have not been to a UBCM. Former Mayor Burr did, and I believe former Mayor Broughton did as well. I think Mayor Burr is the only one that's actually spoken, which was his average speed over distance, which was his resolution, which was endorsed by the UBCM. CAO, do you have any more to shed on this?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on whether local government has items that they're putting forward or that they've taken a stand on or supported at the local LGLA level, the Lower Mainland Local Government Association level, or if there's, even if there are resolutions that other communities are putting forward that council wishes to discuss and support, that's certainly certainly the opportunity there. In terms of the pros and cons or the benefits of going to the convention, it's certainly, from the perspective of networking with your peers and talking about issues that are germane to, other communities as well as ourselves. That's one of the primary benefits. Some of the off the floor social activities are where you actually have some of the best conversations, whether it's with other municipalities or regional districts or with provincial officials or hydro people or what have you. So there are opportunities to have good discussions. At this point in time, we don't have anything, nothing's come forward formally from council to put on the floor at UBCM, and that date has, well, it hasn't completely passed. It's just the early dates have passed for that in terms of getting the buy-in from the local Lower Mainland Local Government Association for such resolutions, which is sort of the best route to go. It's still possible to put forward resolutions that don't have the endorsement of the Lower Mainland Local Government Association, but certainly it's not the preferred methodology. So yeah, I mean, it's certainly up to council to discuss whether or not.
So, if I can just answer my own question, or paraphrase what you said. So, currently there's no plan for any of us to go to the UBC, is that correct?
There's some funding. Historically, I think.
No plans.
Oh, I thought you said funding. I'm sorry.
Is there a plan? Does anyone intend to go?
I meet with my colleagues and contemporaries 45 times a year. I don't need to go to Whistler or Victoria to see
It
them.
was around the table question,
And,
because it's not just a...
Minister Robinson, who I would dearly love to speak to, CAO, Sean has told me not to.
So it was around the table question, so yes, none of us plan to go out. Take that as a given then, from what I understand.
No, I'm still too naive. I don't fully understand what happens there.
So at the UBCM then, if you might go there to support an issue, but there's not a voting mechanism, is there? Is there expectation?
Yeah, there is a vote.
Yeah, no, you're voting.
So if one of us went, we would vote for Lions Bay.
Mhm.
Okay, but what you're saying is no point in going unless you feel strongly about something.
Well, you can see what Mayor Brody and his council are putting forward. Richmond has got apples and ducks in their stuff that they're putting forward for, and then there's the single-purpose bags and stuff like that. So, there's good stuff in there. It's what you want to do.
Okay.
Done?
Yeah.
It's funded. If you want to go, talk to the office.
$620 $475 if you sign up by August the 3rd. So we have to make decisions fast if you want to save some money.
There you
The
go.
bigger expense is usually the accommodation and the meals.
And that is none of that.
Yeah.
Catch a bus to come home at night.
Okay.
I wasn't sure what it was
That's
this
the
year.
line. That's the Lions Bay way when you're in town. Okay, done. You looked at rural dividend?
Yeah, so that's, no funding for us. G6, fire smart do's and don'ts. It's actually quite a nice graphic. I'm just wondering if it's something we can circulate.
I really would love to go back to the grant. Is that it? Are we rolling over? I struggle to take the first no for an answer on some of these things. They've given us kind of 3 reasons, but they're not very specific as to what the reasons are. My questions are, does anyone else in Metro find a way around this? Does anyone else in Metro try to find a way around it? Bowen has?
So Bowen got the same letter, but the answer was yes.
Okay, So that's my
So
question.
same criteria that they've
So-
laid out here.
And my question is the difference because we're inside UCBM and they're not, and they're outside of it? Because that's a question that's come up a few times. Or can we get some more details of why we're different to Bowen?
Well,
I'm not ready, personally not ready to give up on this one.
well, we're not going to get anywhere on it. I can pretty much tell you that because we've done everything we possibly can. They basically are comparing us to Bowen in this set of criteria and saying we have highway linkages, we have commuters.
Bowen is more commuters than us.
I know they have lots of commuters.
They haven't given us a substantial
also-
difference between us and Bowen here, in my opinion. I think we still have a shot at this.
They're also the only member of the Islands Trust that isn't eligible previous to now, because they got a permanent exemption. And they considered Bowen to be less economically integrated with Metro than we are. And that's probably partly or mostly because of the highway. And being adjacent to, you can be downtown in half an hour. Anyways,
More people commute from Bowen.
because they have more people. They have a higher population. I don't know what the percentage is for that statement. I just haven't got a clue. They phoned. I had a conversation prior to receiving the letter, and this is basically what the conversation entailed. And I poked and prodded and asked whether or not there had been any consideration in their program review for lowering the population limit from 25,000 because part of what they were saying was it's not, the program doesn't have enough money to fund all of the projects that they should be funding for those communities that are bang on in terms of the objectives of the program and their size and the rural nature of them. So my comment to that was, well, why don't you lower the population base then and help small rural communities that are even smaller and need it more. But the answer seemed to be, well, we didn't look at that. We didn't want to change the parameters of population criteria. And what else did I say?
I mean, I think some of the things are happening. I think that, I don't know if the elephant in the room is this UCB, Urban Containment Ground, UCB. I don't know if that's got anything to do if they factored that in, which is still a complete non-thing. Why we are different to Bowen and District Northland and all the rest of it. Came out strongly in that survey we did about Woodburn, that people see themselves as rural. We have a rural postal code. I don't know that we put those kind of points forward, and it certainly wasn't in the letter. We maybe didn't know at the time we drafted the letter. I think we should try and understand why the CS is different. And the only difference is because we've got a fixed highway and they've got a moving highway. Because the ferry's a highway in BC.
I think Anmore.
Anmore was declined.
Pardon me?
They were declined.
Yeah, Anmore was declined, and they are they have an urban containment boundary which cuts them in half.
Yeah.
So. I mean, they could probably make a better argument than we could, maybe. I don't know, but they were still declined. It's the proximity to.
They're a lot more central in Metro.
I think it's the proximity to, and Belcarra too, the proximity to the urban nature of Metro and being a part of Metro. I guess, they bought Bowen's arguments that, hey, we're an island, we're different, we're part of the Islands Trust, and we're not fully integrated with the lower mainland. You've got to take a ferry to get there. You can't just drive downtown. So there was a lot, they had more in terms of these criteria
I think it's just a limited ferry schedule that tips the scale there. We can't go at 2 in the morning.
Yeah, I just really don't know what more we can do. But this is from the deputy minister, so or the assistant deputy minister. Yeah, I think we've fought a good fight. We got the support of our MP and our MLA and wrote the same letters. We took it to Metro. We did all the same things that Bowen did. And we also took part in their program review. We wrote letters to the minister, and I think that tried every avenue that I could think of in terms of trying to get dispensation for this program, and I don't see it happening. I think there's nothing more that we can say. If you've got some ideas on what more we can say, then
I'll jot some. I'll think of something. I'll jot some
All right.
ideas down.
Well, I tell you what, why don't you, I think with Maud's yes, go solo on this one, Councillor Abbott, and run it through the CAO. Councillor Bermier.
Okay, if I speak to Bowen.
yeah.
Sure.
We've got an interesting fire do's and don'ts, page 8. It's a nice graphic, it's educational, it's probably worth sharing. I'm not sure what the best way to do that is, if it's a mail out or posted or...
Well, how did it come to us? That doesn't have
Brigida
any
Shore.
sender. Hey, what?
Brigida Shore sent it
Oh.
along with something else.
I'm not sure if that's something you want to distribute. Or if it's
I think I talked to the
It looks like it's on bcwelfare.ca.
CAO about the DPE, the emergency coordinator, when he's got his feet on the ground writing an article. This might be a piece that you might want to incorporate.
You got to be careful with this one because this is more geared at rural areas where you've got more property. For example, we've looked at it before a number of years back, and when you're talking about not having your house in a certain radius of the trees, we can't do that here. We live in the forest.
Okay.
And just like stacking firewood more than 10 meters from your home, well, who's got a property that big around here? It's great ideas for more of the wildlands, more rural ones, if I should say. Sorry. But I don't know, I'd have to put up a blind in front of our house. We got cedar siding, a cedar shake roof, and...
Yeah,
All right.
I felt doesn't.
All right, so let's just say,
awkward.
let's say that there's some problems with it, and move on.
Okay. Then provincial support for libraries. Not sure if
Yes, why not?
Come on, fly through these, Councillor Barmier.
Sorry?
Fly through them.
Yeah, so I'm not familiar with this PACE program. It sounds interesting. And I don't know if it's, maybe it's something that we should just take away and learn about. Crime needle cleanup, I don't really think we have anything much more to say there. The best management practices for invasive species information we received. I'm not sure if it lines up with our invasive species program.
It does.
Yeah, so this is what...
It does?
Yeah, Sea to Sky Invasive Species Council does most of our work, and they use the best management practices.
But we don't target things like ivy as invasive species. We just...
On municipal lands, we do.
Yeah.
On private lands, we do not. It's the resident's choice.
Do you want some?
I'll tell you a few pieces of municipal land.
Absolutely, we just don't have the funding.
So we don't have the funding to do it. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a huge problem.
If the powers that be were serious, they wouldn't sell it at nurseries, so.
This was already touched on, the winning of the grant for asset management plan. UBC convention, this is another reminder to book meetings, if you think you're interested in going.
I've got the dates there, I didn't do that.
Well, this is the one resolution that I thought was kind of interesting. It's jurisdiction over single-use plastic regulation. It sounds like BC's had some setbacks there, but we might, as a local municipality, want to take this on. So I'm not sure. We don't really. It's probably more of a gesture than anything, but
Well, the only place that would sell it would be the store,
Yeah.
and I'm sure we could deal with that with a phone call.
Well, we would need to wait for the legal dust to settle.
Yeah,
So the
yeah.
province would have to enact enabling legislation
Right.
that allows municipalities to take that step.
Right. So the idea, I guess, we would support this resolution, would be someone to support it.
Well, it kind of brings up,
Those are the bigger coffers do the fight.
well, it brought up something else to me, like with Deidre being an RN and everything, when she graduated, they got away from glass syringes and went into these throwaways. And I think around doctors' offices and stuff, there's often break-ins, and what are they after? They're looking for grab a handful of syringes. And so I thought, well, if you're going to eliminate single-use items like food things, should they be considering getting rid of syringes? Not something that we deal with here, unless you're diabetic or something else like that. But nobody seems to be talking about that. We're still a throwaway society. Anyway, sorry, I won't digress further.
Okay.
Okay, so now on to resident correspondence. Natalia brought up concern about, or Ms. Hayden brought up concern about large
Logs.
Yeah, is there, do we have a responsibility to clean that? Is that part of Public Works?
It's a budget request. We do not remove logs off Kelvin Grove. We do at Lions Bay Beach Park.
Okay.
10 hours of mercury pulling logs off the beach is going to cost about $4,500.
We never pulled a log off KG.
No.
Has it got any worse in the last, like recently? Not this summer, so not since last winter storms.
Every
It's
summer.
definitely turning
But
into
every year before that.
Yeah.
I mean,
All we need is a high tide, it's cleared out.
some people like to have one natural beach, right? Like when you get out there, you see people utilising it as well, seeing one it's a natural beach, it's a natural surrounding, it doesn't look manicured.
Well, when the tide's out, there's a lot of beach there.
Mhm.
When the tide's up, it could be jammed full with logs, and it takes one king tide to, you just have to come to terms with the beach changes every year, and every tide. So,
CFO Rook, another item for the budget discussion.
It's already on there,
So
actually.
are we even considering it?
No.
Okay, leave it for that discussion.
Well, I mean, we've never done it, there's not a reason not to do it.
No, I just think there are people that actually like the fact we've got one natural beach. It's left to nature. And there's lots of good reasons for that. So I think it's not just a budget discussion.
You know, when I'm looking at that beach, I'm usually 100 yards offshore, so looks a little loggy to me.
I think what we meant by budget discussion was when we have our
2020.
supplementary list, no decisions are made. It's just the ideas are put on it at that time. Council would discuss whether or not they even wanted to spend money on that. So it wasn't so much asking for the money, it was putting on there as a point of discussion.
Is it possible, okay, yeah, I mean, maybe it's just the access for some people, it's hard to climb all the logs.
Yeah.
Cut a snare through there or something like that, less of an exercise.
we used to have a resident who's moved, but he would go down every summer with a chainsaw
Cut it.
and kind of clear some,
Float them out there.
yeah, exactly. And that's what, when you're down there as a group, you do your best to dislodge the big
Yeah,
logs and
okay.
send them out.
Okay.
But I don't know how much money, and it's really, like, I don't even know how you could control it, because the way that one side comes and jams it up there, it would take a monumental amount of effort and time to get rid of some of those. So it could be a complete waste of time and money,
And back up.
potentially.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah, or the next big time.
Or gone before the end of the year.
Okay. So, do we?
No response?
It's okay. Hillary, my
So we're all
neighbor.
going to respond.
We should respond to
No, someone
it.
needs to respond. We
Yeah.
can't not respond.
I can respond
Okay.
and just let her know we'll be bringing it up at budget time, but there's no money available right now.
If you could also mention it's never been done before.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ms. Andelay brought up an article around photo radar being issued again in Lions, or BC. That's just something to ponder, you know, why don't we do that on our highways?
Maybe when somebody's at the UBCM, they can go to Minister Farnworth and
Yeah.
bend his arm while he's having a beer.
Yeah, they're bringing it back in.
Isn't this, isn't this just the intersection
That's what I-
But the issue doesn't change.
I actually,
So
I couldn't see a date on this article, so I wondered whether it was old.
I'm sure it's the same thing like with the intersection they're doing.
Like red light cameras have always
Yeah,
been in
there's
existence,
Yeah.
red light
but
cameras.
I thought photo radar was just a no.
It is a no-no. Never gonna do it.
Well, I think you're right. The twist on this one is they'll not only ding you for running the red light, but if you're going through too fast to miss the red light, they'll still ding you.
Yes.
That's how I read it anyhow.
it's not done.
Thank you for that response. Jim Burr.
Former Mayor Burr,
Done.
done, okay. Harvey Tank project questions,
Done.
you've replied?
Staff did.
Okay. And Ian Mackey brought up the code of conduct.
I think the CAO is going to give us some info.
Reply to him.
So, with respect to that, Mr. Mackey brought up some interesting points. I had Shauna pull how many people have actually signed the code of conduct. So out of 32 committee members, various committees, including the board, 32 people were missing 10, including Tony Gravel twice. So 10 people, 11 signatures out of 32 signatures for the code. When we looked at the options for a code of conduct, if you recall, it was the materials that were put forth were from the working group that was comprised of LGMA and UBCM and the province. And while most of the material focused on councils or regional district boards, there was also materials that spoke to adopting or utilizing it for a wider array of committees and commissions and boards and so forth, which is the route that we ended up going. In terms of some of the points raised by Mr. Mackey, the Board of Variance, as he notes, has to follow procedural fairness. That is a common law requirement for any administrative tribunal. Most of the time that boils down to providing people with the opportunity to be heard and not coming into the decision-making process with any bias. The statute itself, the Local Government Act, really only speaks to the board's jurisdiction and procedural requirements, so it doesn't really speak to conduct of members who make up such a board. Our own bylaw, section 10.6, deals with conflict of interest, and section 12.1 deals with procedural fairness. So those points are covered off, in terms of some of the other comments, I don't want to, I'm not going to take issue with Mr. Mackey and some of the aspects of it, but really, when it comes down to it, it is somewhat nebulous by its very nature. It's a code, it's a guideline, it's not a statute or a bylaw. So, the desire to have certainty of terms and not have sort of airy-fairy concepts, while it's understandable, it's not really the objective. The purpose is really, part of the purpose is to provide some general guidance for people who act on behalf of the municipality, but also part of the purpose is to engender trust of the public in the conduct of all local government functions. I can certainly understand that board members would not want to see this become an avenue through which people who didn't like the decision that was meted out use this as an opportunity to attack board members and question their bona fides and their conduct in acting in their capacity as Board of Variance members. But I would point out that the public already has that opportunity. They can already attack Board of Variance decisions if they feel that there was a breach of procedural fairness or some bias that was evident to them in some way, shape, or form. There's a process for that. It's a judicial review, and it's an application to court. So there already are opportunities for people to do that. So I don't know that this is really necessarily opening up a new avenue for people, and I wouldn't expect that would be anything that would come to pass. But at the same time, I'm cognizant of the fact that board members are professionals in their field, and they're volunteering their time on behalf of the municipality. And if they are concerned that this is something that is a threat or something that makes them feel uncomfortable, I'm prepared to suggest that the board be exempted from the code. I think that, as noted, they do have legal principles and obligations that they're bound to, and they are different from our other committees in that they render decisions on specific applications that come before them, and for all intents and purposes those are final decisions, other than a few instances where there are avenues of appeal, but there's not that many. So I think that there is a distinction, there's a ground for distinction between the Board of Variance members and our other committee members.
Excuse me.
If council wishes, then I think that that's certainly an avenue or an option that council could choose to go with, and that's to distinguish them from the other committees and exempt them from the code of conduct.
Could I move that? Could we do that?
Any comments, any questions?
I thought I did. Okay, I'll make the motion.
What's the motion?
That we exempt the Board of Variance from the requirement of the Code of Conduct.
I'll second
Okay, let's go to discussion of the list of, sorry, I guess I'm going, I don't want to know the names of the 31 less the 10. And of those 10, the VOB would be 3.
Mm-hmm.
So there's 7. Have we asked those 7 a second time, or is it?
I already have asked twice.
We've asked them twice. Okay. CAO, what would be your suggested course of action for the 7 that have not? Are we tracking them to death, or?
I think that it bears following up on, and you know, some of these committees don't meet very often, so maybe that's part of it, and so I think it's just something we need to follow up on.
Okay.
And then if there's a distinct
Theme?
if there's a distinct request
Yeah.
that they not be required to sign it, then we can explore that a little further. But
Okay.
the approach at this
Thank you very much. Any other discussion?
Just a comment. So the original document that we all received when we decided to run renderings forward as part of our package that's still on the village website, I went back and looked at it, and that document clearly refers to councils, not committees. I'm in the first paragraph, the one that's on our website now.
It incorporates both, though. It incorporates
No,
council and members of committees.
This is councils and boards, but it's talking about boards as individual boards. All that being said there, you produced numerous other examples where it's expanded to committees and so on, so that's fine. I'm happy that it wasn't meant to. The Board of Variance is a little different, so I'm comfortable with that. I think there's some members of the Infrastructure Committee that have not signed it and have voiced opposition to signing it. I'm not sure what their reasons are. I don't know if there's anything to do with the fact that all members of APEG or whatever it is. So there may be something else there, but maybe that's, as you say, for the future discussion. But I thought the initial idea was it was meant to be for council. It was the original. Because I don't think we ever asked anyone to sign the old code of conduct in a committee, did we?
I'm not 100% sure how many people,
Well,
signed the previous.
I don't think it was asked of committees. I think it might have said it was supposed to be, but it wasn't.
I think it's been part of the package for numerous council orientation packages, but yeah, I don't know how many actually.
You tend to didn't ask people to produce the sign copy very often, was the answer. So,
Yeah, my first go around, no, I didn't, and prior to that, I don't know.
anyway, so I just think there may be more to it than the members of the IC as well.
Mm.
So,
Well, one non-council member of the IC signed it, but with a caveat attached to it, so, which was fine, as long as it didn't detract from any other protections that that person would have as a member of a committee in accordance with Community Charter and Local Government Act protections. So that's fine, and if that's all that the rest of them are looking for, then that will be explored. It can be explored. So I think that we just need to take the next level of inquiry and determine if there's an issue or if it's just a case of haven't got around to it.
Nothing else? Call a motion, all in favor? Unanimous? Yes, thank you. All right, thank you very much. As we close around the bases, CAO, you had 2 under new business.
We had to add one more
Oh,
resident 6, Mrs. Organ film.
oh, thank you.
I hadn't seen that, so that.
It's the one that I sent this afternoon, yesterday, whenever I did. Okay.
Should have been probably in here somewhere.
Oh, so are you gonna reply or?
Excuse me.
Because we've basically taken this issue up for this filming.
All right, I tell you what, I will respond to these ordinance. Okay, I'll take care of that. All right, and with a hearty thank you for 3 months of steadfast duty and correspondence, thank you, Councillor Farmer. Wait,
This is where you pick up your heels.
and Councillor Cunliffe will start with a month off.
That hasn't counted your 3 months, though.
How does that work?
Does the clock start ticking now?
Well, I love this gig's not so bad. All right, CAO, new business.
Okay, so we have an application for parking of a trailer. The owner of the trailer, which is about a 20-foot solid white cargo type trailer, lives up on Timbertop, 455 Timbertop, be Mark Ignis. And So there's absolutely nowhere to park a trailer like that up there. His driveway is very steep and constrained, and the roadways up there are very narrow. Would be obstructing traffic if it were to be parked up there. So he found a spot on Mountain Drive, just across from 290 Mountain Drive. There's a spot on the road where basically a parking area. There's always a few vehicles parked there. He did go door to door. Didn't really find anyone home other than the occupant of 290, who sent me an email who suggested that preferably it wouldn't be parked across the street from his house in the area where people, guests, people coming for hiking, etc., tend to park. There is a long stretch of Mountain Drive from there all the way down to the stop sign at Bayview, where one can park on that uphill side of the street. So, you know, cars can park all the way along there. It widens quite wide right up by the stop sign, which would be the other logical location. The trailer right now is wedged right into the corner of the parking area around 290 Mountain Drive, pushed right back into the bush as far as it'll go, basically. So he's trying to make it as palatable as possible, and I think that it's a reasonable location, notwithstanding the neighbor's comment. Other than that, I think the only other spot, I wouldn't want to see it parked parallel on the road because it's bigger than a car. I think it would obstruct traffic more than a car parked on the side of the road, and it would be sitting there not moving. So the only other spot for it would be at the very end of Mountain Drive, in this 50 yards or meters before the stop sign at Bayview. There's a big hedge in front of the house at 220, so they wouldn't be looking at it. 290 kind of looks right at it. That's about all I've got. Oh, yeah, the other part of this was, the expectation is that it would be there for about a month or two. And our bylaw, section 11 of the traffic and parking bylaw, does provide the opportunity for council to allow for parking of an extraordinary vehicle or trailer where it's impractical due to the topography of the owner's property to park it safely at their own property. So I think it's an appropriate application, just a question of exactly where it goes. And the cost per month would be $80 per month for the 1 or 2 months that it's parked.
Is this the first time that there's been an application to park?
Pardon me?
Is this the first time there's been an application to park?
No, we previously had a horse trailer that was on.
I mean, by this person.
By this person, yes. Yeah.
So this is a one-off, this isn't like a renewal.
I think it might have been
type
parked
situation.
for a little while there last year without realizing that
There was
needed
a permit
permission.
necessary, but it doesn't remain there like year
No,
round. It's
no,
not,
no.
it's not being stored,
No.
it's merely just being.
Yeah, it's not an extended period. The other one that we had previously was an extended, ongoing, annual type situation.
Councillor Abbott?
Couple of comments. They're very well, obviously. They're all time of night. That part you're talking about closer down to the stop street there was someone a couple of years ago who used to frequently put parallel park there in the summer. When weekends, and park there Monday, Friday. The camper, but I haven't seen him there this year, so that seems to be well. Parking spot you're talking about though is well, you're talking about the perpendicular parking spot, the asphalted piece, right, where the road widens.
Yeah, it's like a
It's a little blip in the road.
blip in the road. So there's
There's
parking.
lots-
People angle park in there,
Angle parking.
well off the road.
Yeah, well, so it's in there. So those parking spaces are frequently, full,
Mhm.
just with residents. I guess it was a short period and it's only limited time, but yeah, it's a pity you couldn't have got a hold of some input with some of the residents. Because frequently that's full, just with residents, not visitors. So it is, it's not like it's an underutilised area.
But they can park on the street as well as that parking spot.
Yeah, further down towards the stop sign.
Well, even all the way along there. I did it myself today. I drove up there to check it out. You can pull right off, yeah. There's a bit of a ditch. It's a very shallow ditch, but there was enough room for me to have 4 wheels off the pavement. I took a photo on my phone.
Never thought
I
it was
didn't
that
print
big
it, sorry.
myself.
In the ditch, in the ditch, you weren't coming out. And we were talking about something different. Anyway, but you've been there now a little bit.
So it's 290s right here. So this is where. Well, I guess it kind of is this right here. But you can park all the way along here.
We need to extend.
And you
Oh,
can
after 10, didn't it?
along here is a little bit. But all the way from here all the way to the stop sign. You can park all the way along
Just
there.
having too much fun.
This
All right.
But back in very few people.
We'll do a little multitask, have a motion to extend the meeting until 11:30. Thank you, Fred, for the second. We were multitasking.
Okay.
We've extended the meeting till 11:30.
Can I ask some question about this? I don't want to drag it on, I'm sorry, but it says type and make of vehicles including trailer, and he's got a hauling 2014 Toyota Tundra, 2012. So that's his truck and trailer. So which is he parking at? The license plate of the trailer is there, and it's 6.4 meters and 25 kilograms. So it's not really that heavy a trailer. So
It's the 6.4 is the trailer. His truck was attached to it when I drove up there this evening.
but he's not willing to pay for both. He's just going to pay for the trailer.
I think it's just the trailer that's
Just
to
the
be
trailer.
left there, yeah. He'll drive away with the truck if he gets permission.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Just curious.
That's my understanding.
So the staff recommendation is that that's at this particular location, they're supportive of this application.
I think it's a reasonable spot.
Is it a finite date set?
No, you could set one in your resolution,
If he
if
stated
you so wish.
that it would be there for a month or two, I do see it being problematic if we say, okay, and then he leaves it parked there for 8 months, because then at that point, then you need to find external storage for your trailer. It doesn't belong on the sidewalk or the street. So I would support this if it was truly short-term. And like you said, out of the way and not going to impede other people's use of.
So I think you'd mentioned 60 days, so if we were to go, I don't know what everybody's threshold is it, 80 days or 90 days? Do you have a sense for this, CAO? Nope?
If you said 60 days, then
Well,
60 days.
okay. Well, okay, so I'll take a punt at this one. So relative to this application that council approves the request on the area designated by staff for a period of, give me a number,
60 days.
60 days from date of notice. I have a seconder. Thank you. Discussion. I mean, it's, we're making it work for one person and not for somebody else.
I'm concerned about the precedent here. There's been a lot of years ago, people parked everywhere. There was a whole campaign to stop people. You weren't allowed to do it.
Well,
Find somewhere else.
that said, the guy's trying to comply.
Yeah, and we have a bylaw that allows them to apply for
Yeah.
it. So we've opened that. The fact that you couldn't find a single person home.
The middle of the day.
Yeah, well, go
Well,
around 6 o'clock.
Well, where he's parking is a little out of the way here too, so.
There's nothing in the bylaw that actually requires him to do that.
Oh.
It's just a
Okay.
process that we've implemented, but
Councillor Barmayer, nothing to weigh in?
you know, he's up the street, he's burning way down here, someone else is probably look at, drive by, be annoyed by. It's an inconvenience to people on the street. It's unsightly. Shouldn't be taken lightly. There's got to be a good reason for it.
Is it the air that's getting sucked out of here, or?
Well, like I said, if it's truly a short-term one-off, then we have a bylaw to accommodate that. If this is a way of trying to store something close to your house for the same price that you could probably find somewhere else in Squamish to store your boat trailer, it's not, I'm gonna say, as disruptive as the person that was parking their boat trailer along Lions Bay Ave last year, eating up 3 or 4 spaces for people to park and walk to the beach. But that being said, it does, if it's short term, and we have a bylaw to accommodate it, if it was to carry on past that, then it would definitely need to be revisited, because then it's not fitting within the parameters of the intent.
All right, Councillor Cunliffe, I'm going to call your leadership and call a motion here. All in favor as I proposed, and which Councillor Cunliffe has concurred to? Councillor Abbott declines, thank you. All right. Alrighty. We're getting all the tough ones in one meeting. There you go. All right. So there is. Oh, everybody slept, Fred. Okay. What? I guess we're losing our appeal here.
She left a while ago.
There you go. Okay, public questions, none. Closed council meeting. So the proposed topics for discussion in the absence of the public are the KG wastewater treatment plant, entering service contract details, the CAO employment review, which I'm going to chat with this guy in a second, and also the item that we tabled, which is the award of contract for the asset management plan. Thank you. And that the meeting be closed to the public on the basis of matters to be considered under the following sections of the community charter. 91, a part of the council meeting may be closed to the public if the subject matter being considered relates to or is one or more of the following. C, labor relations or other employee relations, and J, information that is prohibited or information that if it were presented in a document would be prohibited from disclosure under Section 21 of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, and N, the consideration of whether a council meeting should be closed under provision of the section or subsection 2. I'm going to suggest, before we go vote, that council anticipates reconvening the open meeting to discuss the following items, which will be the KG wastewater treatment service plans, the award of the contract of the asset management plan. And when I have Councillor Abbott's nod, that is like gold to me, buddy.
It's just a reflection of the paper.
All right, so with that being said, we have voted, I presume, yes, and we will close the session now. Thank you. Thank you. The two things that we'll be reporting out are the stuff that we had.
So you're in open now?
Mm-hmm. I'm in open. Thank you. What we'll be talking about in the open session is, as we talked about in the close, was the KG wastewater treatment plant services and the asset management plan, and we will go to those items right now, which was on the agenda, staff reports 8A2, and it was the Public Works Manager request for decision on the Kelvin Grove wastewater treatment engineering services, that council approved the award of the RFP 19.01 kg RBC wastewater treatment plant engineering services to EDH Consulting Limited in the amount of $20,805.56, and that the CAO be authorized to execute contract documents in accordance with the scope of the work required up to the amount of $20,805.56, not including GST. I'll put forward the motion. Can I have a second? Discussion on this.
I think the words up to should go in the first part of the resolution, right in front of the figure, as well as, it's already in the second
In
part.
the amount of up to, okay, thank you. So amended, take it out. Any other pieces? Yeah. Good to go? Good, call a motion, all in favor? Thank you, unanimous. The other item was the, again, 8A6. CFO's request for decision on the asset management plan, which was phase 2, and the recommendation is that council approve the award of RFP 19.02 asset management plan phase 2 to Your City Solutions Inc. in the amount of $29,950 plus GST, and that the CAO be authorized to execute a contract for services with Your Solutions Inc. in substantial accordance with the draft service agreement attached as Schedule B to the subject RFP. To expedite this, I'll put forward a motion. Can I have a second? Any discussion, any questions? Councillor Rabbit.
Just like to suggest that the look at options for considering unpriced bids to be discussed in open, so we can have a more open discussion on these proposals, and only close for the sort of confidential dollar numbers.
There we go. Any further discussion? Call a motion, all in favor? Unanimous again, thank you very much. And that concludes the open portion of the meeting. Council will go back into closed to begin the discussion on the CAO employment review. And council does not anticipate reconvening the open meeting for period. Motion to adjourn the public meeting. Thank you. All in favor? Thank you. Staff, thank you. And let me just at 11:15, we are back into open to advise. We have closed. We are out of the closed section, and we are going to close the meeting. Motion to close. Thank you, Fred. Thank you, colleagues. And unanimous. We are closed and done. Thank you.